allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We need to take roll call. Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson. Here. Katrina Binkowitz. Here. Doug Day.
Here.
Joseph Wetmore.
Here.
Tyler Levine.
Here. So this is a special meeting of the comp plan. We have people here that if anybody, out of the sense of fairness, if anybody has not expressed their concerns, whether it be by email or verbally, if they wish to, they may come up and talk to the board. You can go down the list.
Is there a list?
There's not a sign-in list.
No, just
That's just a sign-in for attending.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm here on behalf of the Lansing Central School District. And I'm just reading our letter. Lansing Central School District is the heart of our community. Currently, our campus is the town center. We are the ones welcoming new families as well as longtime Lansing families with open arms. We strive to meet the needs of all Lansing families from all walks of life. In addition to providing an excellent education for our children, in collaboration with our Parks and Recreation Department, we provide families with stellar music and athletic programs. We are the major reason families move to Lansing, as well as the reason generations choose to stay. We would like to partner with the town board as work continues on the comprehensive plan. In particular, we are concerned about the following: zoning around the district campus that may impact traffic safety, zoning around the district campus that may allow businesses near our school buildings, housing that may impact enrollment increases, especially increases of student and family populations that would require services funding, growth patterns that might impact an increase in crime rate. The mission of LCSD is to educate every student to become knowledgeable, responsible, healthy, and productive citizens. To that end, we ask the town board to include district administrators and representatives in all discussions and continued work on the comprehensive plan. We look forward to joining forces with the town to maintain the quality of life we've all come to know and love in Lansing. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to keep a copy of that for our records. Thank you.
Hi there. So I have two comments tonight, one from Sandra Conlon about Reed. She's committed and couldn't be here tonight, and her comments got some dittos from Larry Sharpstein and Deb Trumbull as well. Please remind the town board that on December 13th, 2018, 2017, per the town board minutes, Councilperson Katrina Binkowitz stated she would like time for public connection on this comprehensive plan, possibly 2 to 3 months. Although it is not in the minutes, from what I understood at the meeting, the town board members all agreed another 2 to 3 months is all that would be necessary to gather additional information, decide if any edits were needed, and approve the plan. It's been beyond 2 to 3 months, so the board should make good on their promise to approve the plan and not delay further. If the town board would like the zoning in Bell Station to change, opening the town up for a reduced tax base and the risk of lawsuit, then that is also an issue. The comments that I have tonight is we should be careful emphasizing Bell Station and excluding similar neighboring properties. We need to be cognizant that the potential deal that was in the works with Bell Station is currently off the table. In addition to potential tax consequences of reducing the tax base, we need to move forward recognizing that singling out Bell Station as a recreational zone as opposed to including potentially neighboring properties also opens up the accusation of spot zoning. So my second comment is, it's come to my attention that there is $500,000 split between grant money and matching funds that will go away if the comprehensive plan is not in place by the end of May. So my question to the board is this. Given the previous commitment by the board in December of 2017, get the comp plan done in the next 2 to 3 months, what is the commitment of the board now over 3 months later? Will the board commit to get this plan done by the end of May? And if not, how does the board intend to replace for the local taxpayers this $500,000 in funding that will go away? My mom was very busy. We had 4 kids in my family, and her call to action was, let's get the show on the road. My recommendation is the board make written proposed changes, submit them to the board as a whole, and vote on those before the end of May. Let's get the show on the road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dean, would you like to?
Sure.
Anyone else?
I didn't bring anything.
But you never lost your words.
That's absolutely true. I will echo some of Dean's comments also in most of the planning board. The hours that have gone into the plan as it was presented. And then I just had a brief time to look at some of the changes that were proposed tonight. The CAB, the Conservation Advisory Board, which I think is really a step that we don't need in this town. We look at UNAs, unique natural areas. We look at critical environmental areas. At the planning board level, it's done on the county level, also in the 239 review. It is reviewed and over-reviewed. And if you get this Conservation Advisory Board, and it has teeth to it, it only slows people down. It's one more step to tell a developer. And then if it gets carried away far enough, maybe we're going to be hiring professionals or requiring developers to hire professionals to do environmental reviews for wherever they want to do this, wherever they want to develop. It's a step that's really not needed in this town. And I can only relate similar things. Ithaca has an ILPC, Landmarks Preservation Committee. They have historic districts. The ILPC has so much teeth now that the planning department won't move on anything unless this goes back to the ILPC. So I've had projects in the city that we want to move a window that was previously here. We want to move it to this wall. Nope, you got to wait for the ILPC. What do I do with my men standing here? You know, it's a stop order. A couple months ago, we ran a couple bathrooms up in an area in a historic district off Cornell campus. We ran 2 4-inch vents out the side of the house. Stop. You got to take a picture. You got to present it. Really? I mean, is this the type of oversight that we need in Lansing? And I say no, it isn't. It's looked at over and over again. My comments on Bell Station remain the same. As Dean said, I believe that the wording that's in the comprehensive plan is loosely worded enough that allows us to move this thing any direction it may go in the future. It may never go any place. It may sit there. And if we look at that tract of land and we go south, there's another tract of land that a private owner owns. It's a couple thousand feet, 2 of them, one near Ross Road and one a little farther south. I mean, do we go in there and say, geez, that's a nice place, let's rezone that for recreational? It's not something that should be done, and we shouldn't start the precedent now. It ruins the tax base and it just sends a bad message out to the public. The other one I'm trying to remember, I lost it on my iPhone, and then I didn't have a copy. The Ag District, there was hours and hours put into the creation of a new Ag District. And we have an existing rural agriculture, but the Ag District's a little stricter. And I don't want to see, I mean, this is what the farmers want. This is what the state wants. They want to protect agricultural land. The county wants us to protect agricultural land. And this leads us in that direction. I don't want to see us remove that ag designation if we can tweak the IRA zone a little bit that has a little more allowances, an overlay zone or something over this ag district in the north. I think that's all that's needed, but I hate to see this thing go away. My other comment was is we included some changing to business zones, maybe adding some business zones on Tripping Road and on 34. Our thoughts on that were, as our town grows closer and closer, we originally, I'll back up. The R3 zone that we created years and years ago was meant to be an intervention between a business and a residential areas. It's got a lot of things that are allowed, but they blend with residential and commercial. It really, there's no R3 zones in these areas, and residential is growing closer and closer. In some of these lands on Tripping Road especially, and on 34, they're zoned in a residential only, and they're not really fit for residential. There's too much traffic, there's too much noise, and our thought was if we leave this open to a possibility when we work with land use and change the maps, that we create a new low-impact business zone. By low impact, I mean a doctor's office, a lawyer's office, something that's going to run 5 days a week from 8 to 5 o'clock. It wouldn't have any impact on the neighbors. It would be very minimal, and it would be all off-street parking. It would be designed for very low impact to the neighborhood. But it allows these landowners to, number one, use their land, because they can't sell it for residential now. Mm-hmm. I guess if I was a neighbor up there, for example, on Hillcrest, I would rather see somebody that's open 5 days a week for 8 hours a day as opposed to 4 houses with 18 kids and 6 cars and everything. But it's really not fit for that use anyway. So I think that was our thinking, and I hate to see that language go away that might include an opportunity to create a low-impact business zone that is going to blend with residential. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
And like Dean said, get the show on the road.
Anyone else have any comments that have not been expressed before by you? Okay. So Michael, you want to come up since we have an open chair now?
Bring my stuff or
Bring all your stuff. Why not? Let's pile it right up here.
Anybody need a bigger table?
I need a big table.
we'll go back now.
I know.
You're going to need another operation.
Yeah, I had another operation last week. So.
Well, you're back to being flipper again.
No,
Flipper.
So I guess the first question I have is for Guy. The reason I asked him to come on board tonight because I think the information for our schedule. I mean, the main thing is that we talked about this is a bigger. Once again, this is my opinion. Bigger picture here of all the stuff going on, and what really is specific and what really is conceptual, what can be addressed later, what can be addressed now, and what can we do to go forward with this to help, as Michael writes, the grant for this $500,000 project. I mean, in reality, are we beyond that already? I mean, are we beyond getting this thing approved by the end of May? Is that window already gone, or is it still possible to do that?
No, I mean, you could, in theory, get the information on the environmental impact review done, make a determination, and if the seeker is, if a negative declaration is declared, adopt the plan. The holdup is and has been for, I'll be kind and say well over a year, that there isn't a final version.
Okay.
There was a draft and then a second committee draft, and then we sent it to the planning board because out of all the agencies and people in the town, they know comprehensive planning the best. They edited it a long time. And it came back to the board, and it's still not final. So it's not the procedural aspects of this that are holding anything up. It's the fact that there's not a final draft yet to measure as against the 2006 version.
So I guess the planning board's version is the latest version, but not the final version. Would that be a fair statement?
It is the latest
The one
version.
on the table.
It's the latest version. It was adjusted slightly to accommodate 239 and subject to a final review. It went to public hearing. But since before that public hearing, the discussion has been it needs more changes. And I think that's what this meeting is here to discuss, whether or not there are more changes.
So I guess when we read in our packet here on the first page, I think this is something that Michael has recommended, because that seems to be the final, not the final piece, but that is the piece that Scott Durrell from the county said he had concerns about. All the rest of the 239 was addressed when the planning board came back with their edits, so to speak, or version, and that this in the yellow is the flag that came up. This is the one that's not been addressed yet. Am I?
Well,
go ahead.
Let me back up a little bit, maybe.
Okay.
And we took the planning board recommended version to the town board. I had kept the 239 review process open several times. I had sent it to them probably 4 times. And so they had input throughout the entire process. As the planning board version was final going to the town board, I asked them, is this sufficient for the final version? They came back with a recommendation that I circulated to the town board members on December 13th. And what I had done was basically highlighted a couple pages with a couple tweaks, and I gave it all to you again last week in yellow. So what I did was I re-verified with Scott just this week. Are those still the final changes that we need to make? And he said, you make those changes, you're good. You know, you can send them through right now. The only thing that was not covered was that they wanted us to submit in the adopting resolution that we would look at the density regulations before we enacted exactly how many dwelling units per acre we had in our final land use ordinance when we got to that point. So
But that's a zoning.
that's a zoning issue.
That's not right now.
It's not right now.
So, I mean, I think we've had a lot of input, and I think tonight we want to discuss particular items as a board, pros and cons, come to some sort of compromise, move forward, and be committed to a May 15th passing of the plan. I think we're all on the same page with the timeline. But we should get to work.
I think the big question is what's the significance of the changes? I mean, if you just take the yellow highlighted items, we're good. If you're going to have major changes in the document, then it's got to go back for another 239 review, and that's going to take at least 30, could take up to 30 days.
Actually, I talked with Scott Doyle, and if we explain to him what changes we made, he's committed to do a 239 review in 10 business days. He understands the reason for us rushing, and he's willing to, if we tell him what the changes are, he's willing to move the process faster so that we can get this.
He's always been good in terms of working, but he has 30 days.
No, but he committed that he could do it in 10 business days for us.
He doesn't know what changes are coming yet.
No, but he said if we tell him what the changes are, so he doesn't have to plug his way through and figure out what's changed, he can do it in 10
That's the
days.
way I've always approached it, with it. I just give them the changes.
Let's focus, and I think place to start, an important place is with the future land use map, which I think has been looked at, and a lot of the conflicts are from looking at it like it's a zoning map. And I think Joe's concept was to back away from that and make it more general, and the zoning comes later, so it's really not an issue. So does everybody have a copy of that? You want to talk about?
Well, this is sent to us today.
Yes. I think a lot of the public's concerns is when it looks like a zoning map and we're talking about individual parcels, they're like, this parcel should be moved this way, this one's on the wrong side of the line. There's a lot of argument about specific points as opposed to a general concept. How do we want the town to develop? And so I'm trying to put together a map that talks about how I hear the town wants to develop. I want housing in the south, I want agriculture here, I'm worried about the lake shore. There's been a lot of talk about the Cuba Scenic Byway. And so this map is not a zoning map, and it's not going to turn into a zoning map. It's just a description of how we would like the town to develop over the next 5 to 10 years, the life of this plan. And then I worked on the descriptions for each of these to envelop the ideas that are put forward. So the idea of having the ag zone be 2 different zones, having different kinds of stuff happening in the residential, that's all in the descriptions. I kept that kind of language. I added language to make it more clear about the kinds of things that I've heard everyone say they want to do here. But I'm trying to make it more descriptive of what we want and less descriptive of what's going on right now.
And with a general, with the simplification of the map, it actually allows for more possibility, more flexibility when you get to the actual zoning changes, which you guys will be involved in.
Well, it looks like you're eliminating the ag district.
I'm not putting it on the map because I don't want to say this parcel is going to be this kind, this parcel. It's in the description still of it's going to be 2 different zones. We're going to do that. That's in the description saying that's what's going to happen here when we go through the zoning.
The zoning is a different map.
No, I
It's
know,
one
but
map.
I think I pointed out last
Nobody's
time.
eliminating an ag district.
The ag plan is part of our comp plan.
Yeah.
So it should be reflected in here.
Right.
We don't have to reflect all the detail in here.
You can
We
say
just have
in
to-
rural agriculture, it encompasses all the ag districts, the RA and the A, right?
And the description specifically says that we're going to be following the ag plan as part of the rezoning of this area.
I just got this
You want-
late today. I didn't read it.
Well,
I understand, and I've been working on it for the past week because, we
Is the
wanted to.
Cuba Lake Scenic Byway,
Stripes right here, that goes
so
all the way
what's
around.
recreation? It's both green?
They're different, it's a
different green?
Yeah. Recreation is these areas in here. I'm sorry, the greens came out more the same in the Xerox copy.
Because it looks like recreation is going to be.
I know, the computer
before
screen,
day,
on the
which-
computer screen, there were much more different greens than they were when they printed out.
So, explain the Cuba Lake Scenic Byway concept. This is let's just go over the concept.
Okay, this is a New York State designation that goes all the way around the lake. And it's actually an asset the town has of the state saying this is an important scenic route to attract tourism through our community. And the public comments talked about how they wanted to highlight the importance of this route in our community and make it part of our economic development, to take something that New York State is already publicizing as an important thing and say, let's build our commercials and agriculture stuff around it. How can we take this and build on it? And that's the point of highlighting it here, is to say this is an important part of our community. We want to highlight it. We want to build on it. If you look at the description, it has some commercial, it has some housing, it has all the sort of things that are going on along it. But highlighting it as part of this scenic byway. How can we take this asset, build it, and turn it into something that will attract people here, attract more money here, attract more businesses here, that will complement our community?
So,
I like, go ahead. If you're going to talk about scenic byway, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say that the zones in the present future land use map that we're looking at is more of a zoning map. It shows what the zones are. It still would exist within that framework. And as you adjust it, those conversations are kind of like underlying the general terms in this map. This brings it back to the wish list, tying it into funding sources for doing things along that way.
I don't understand the suburban residential that you put down since there's businesses here. And I really agree with Mr. Ellis that a low-impact business zone for tripping on Route 34B allows for businesses to come in, low impact, as he said, and blend with residential, which already exists. And it doesn't seem favorable to me that it should be only suburban residential. And also, I would agree with him that it's not the greatest place along our major highways to allow more residents, more housing.
The description is not just residential, it includes small-scale commercial.
And why does it say that?
Do you want to go
Is that what's
over,
in the description?
do you want to go over the descriptions?
The
Then
description,
people understand it more?
each one of these is described in detail.
I have a question here, and maybe Tommy Ellis can answer this, being he's the chair of the planning board. Can these proposals be discussed after our comp plan is approved? Can these proposals be discussed next month, next 6 months from now, as we continue to massage this? Or Guy or Michael, can you answer these questions? Because you know what? We got these things at between 12 o'clock and 1:30 today. And you're asking us, I realize you put a lot of time in this, and I appreciate that, but you're asking us to absorb a lot of information and make drastic changes that really could impact a lot of things. When we've been going this for 6, 7 years, and the planning board's been going over 9 months, I'm just wondering if these are things that can have, when we have more time to discuss them, to do that as we move along. Is that, I'm looking for guidance here from either Tom or Michael or Guy, and anyone of you can chime in. Does this have to be done before we approve this, or can these be discussed later?
You have the right, once, with any comprehensive plan, to update it when and as you choose. So if you, let's say you did adopt this map, and 2 months from now you looked at it and said, nope, this should not be there, we need to amend that map, then you amend the map.
Well, can we adopt it the way it is now, and in 2 months amend it if we want to do it then? I mean, by that time, the planning board has time to digest this with their input also. I mean, I feel that we're being rushed into this when we have a comp plan in front of us already that's had multiple eyes on it, multiple months looking at it. Is this something that they can, that group, God bless them, whoever wants to be on that group, can move along at a more reasonable pace?
Well, I think the point was to come here tonight to just talk about these different concepts.
And I'm not in favor
And I
of
think
this.
people want to hear the concepts talked about, so.
Well, how are we supposed to absorb this when we've only had a couple hours to look at it, if
Well,
that?
let's just go through it and section by section.
Well, I can't make an intelligent decision just by reading it the first time without,
I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight, but let's just go through the
Okay.
proposed changes.
Are these, I haven't had a chance time to read the descriptions either. You've described each zone, Joe?
I'm sorry.
You've made a description of each zone?
Yes.
We already have a description of every zone. If this is a great deviation from our existing definitions of those zones, we're back to new reviews. Everything that's in the existing proposal that was put up to you, it had no exclusions, it had no inclusions, and the language was just general and broad enough that it's going to allow us to move this through and make changes and tweaks when we get to the zoning change. I don't think you want to get involved with these very descriptive zones at this level. I think it's the wrong message to send. I mean, we've got descriptions now of these zones. I don't see the need for it.
Do you want a moment to describe what you did in the zone descriptions?
What I did is I took the public comment that I've been hearing, the concerns and stuff.
You keep saying public comments that you can bring, but I'm not hearing these at the planning board level, Joe. We just don't hear them. I don't know what, okay, I'm sorry.
We've gotten a lot of public comments, which we've been asked. Michael gave us a packet, we've had other people talking to us. We're just trying to
I
process.
think the planning board members all got the same comments.
And we've had comments at the town board level as well, and people are talking about it. And I've tried to synthesize all those into a more general plan that describes things in more general terms to allow for a lot of the flexibility people are asking for, but highlight some of the things that people are concerned about and make those more a part of what the descriptions are. I know you guys work really hard on putting their set of descriptions, and I've heard a lot of critiques and criticisms of them too, and had some of my own. I'm trying to put together something that will balance the public comment with what the planning board and the comprehensive planning committee put together, and bring forward something that I think we can agree on. And I wish we had more time, Ed. You wanted a meeting today. I rushed to put together comments so that we'd have something to work with.
In all fairness, it's been 5 months, Joe. Since we were going to vote on this before. It's been since 5 months.
Do you think your descriptions are substantially greater or different than our existing zone descriptions?
I think they describe more what we want as opposed to what's there right now. I think the descriptions in the plan, as it states, talks mostly about what is happening in the zones right now as opposed to how we would like the zones to develop. And I tried to change the descriptions from what's in place right now to what we would like to see happen in those areas.
Well,
Because this is a future land use map. This is talking about how we want it to develop in the future. And so I am trying to describe what we want as opposed to what's simply there now, because sometimes we want it to move in one direction or another.
Who's we?
Do you want to read
The town.
Do you want to read? Do you want to
Okay.
read? Let's just read some examples. So, I think what it does is makes it. This is not zoning.
I understand that.
This is just making general statements, trying to actually make it more general so that the specifics are in the zoning. So there's more flexibility.
So let's read one. Commercial mixed use. Land uses include, but are not limited to, housing, office, research and light development, light industrial, overnight lodging and accommodations, commercial service and businesses to support area workers and residents. Future development should improve on existing uses. The style of development that currently exists is a vehicular-oriented and is defined by front and roadside parking lots and a general lack of pedestrian connectivity. New development should be designed to minimize traffic flow impact to major roadways through techniques such as shared driveways, on-site traffic management, and shared parking. Pedestrian connections, especially to surrounding residential areas, should be incorporated to the great extent possible.
So these are things that Michael's been saying, that you guys have been saying. This
And
is
we deal
general.
with right now.
Right.
And you have been
And,
doing
and
it
it,
for a
it
long
actually,
time.
so it actually
It's a reiteration of what we already do.
is less specific. It's just,
Okay.
This is what
Then
I
you've
want
got a
to
paragraph you're going to take out.
say. And the paragraph that talks about what's there right now.
But don't we have to realize that what's there right now may be what's there for 100 years?
We're not taking anything away. We're simply saying, what do we want?
Well, what if somebody has that land and wants to do something besides that?
We're not talking about zoning right now. We're saying, how does the town want these areas to develop? We
Yeah,
want.
but it's not necessarily, landowners have rights to do what they want with the
We're
land.
not changing anybody's rights here. We're saying we want new development to minimize traffic flow impacts to major roadways. We want shared driveways and things like that in the new development. We want pedestrian connections. This is what we want. This is what I hear the planning board say they want.
That's
This is
what
I
they've
hear-
been doing.
Yeah, but our future land use descriptions don't say that
they
right
don't.
now.
They just describe what is there, not what
What we want.
our goal is.
I'm putting in what I hear people from the planning board to the town board to the residents say we would like in a commercial area. I'm simply writing that down and saying, this is what we want.
You had a comment?
No, I was just saying, maybe if you read the section that's being crossed out, it
You
would be,
see the difference, the comparison.
well, you would see a difference.
I have a chance to read it.
The area that's crossed out is really written sort of, it's really town center focused in the area. What's written is not. It's more general about commercially mixed use. So,
And
then we get back to the definitions when we do our site plan reviews. We have to say what's in the comprehensive plan and how it lines up with what is in the site plan review.
Which is
too.
why
So
general
that's how it's been
definition
used in the past.
is helpful.
I
Yeah.
personally think this is way too much to do in a very short period of time without the planning board's input also. Because you're looking at all these things that are gonna trigger your land use, are gonna trigger your zoning, if there's any zoning changes. And if I was on a planning board, I would feel I was excluded of all this. Because you're trying to rewrite all these things. Once again, the time is, I do not disagree with the concept. I disagree with the timing on this. And once again, is this something that the rest of the board also has input in this? Does the rest of the board feel that these changes need to be discussed now, or can they be looked at after the comp plan is approved? What is the urgency to do this now as opposed to approving the comp plan and then working on them in a methodical fashion as we have already? Where is the sense of urgency to do this? Now, can this not be approved the way that the planning board has given to us with small little tweaks that we have discussed? And let
We
them.
haven't discussed all the tweaks. That was the point of this meeting. So I'd
Well,
love to
I would
keep
love to.
throwing it back to like,
And
let's
I have-
not do this now, but we're here.
Well, and I have no
Let's
problem,
talk
but you're
about
talking about every different definition of every color. That's a lot to digest. That's a lot to digest without the input of the people that we send training for. We have a planning board that we send to be trained for this type of thing. And wouldn't it be respectful to have them in this discussion and then come back with changes that we can do in a timely fashion without jeopardizing this comp plan?
I don't think that this is being shoved down anybody's throat. It's a concept, it's a very different concept than what we have, and we're trying to present it. So I prefer, I mean, if it's a lot, we could just say there are descriptions, the descriptions and the maps can be looked at by the planning board. We can go on to the other proposed changes.
Well, I'd like to have time to at least read it.
So you don't want this meeting?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are other things that we have been on the discussion that people have mentioned. Ad nauseum is the Bell Station land. I mean, how does the rest of the board feel about the Bell Station land? I mean, that comes up every time.
Then
Let's talk about that. I mean, is it recreational? You have a resolution in 2013 that states exactly what the town board will accept. It's there in black and white. For us to go ahead and change some of that language to jeopardize when we still have a wide use here due to the planning board's description, I think we have the best of both worlds. Discussing something that's not even for sale. And I don't want to spend another 45 minutes on that subject either. But once again, we get locked into the specifics when it's the concept. Do we want recreational land? Yes. We do want paths? Yes. Once again, we talk about, we already allocated money for that. We're already working on a master plan. We're doing these steps right now. So my whole thing with Bell Station, do we need to change that? Or are we comfortable the way it is now? Does it provide enough flexibility to see if something will happen in the future, if we can act one way or the other?
why don't we let everybody have a chance?
I
to
would
state
love to
their
hear from
opinion?
them. I like it, Andra.
I like the way it is now. I think it does give enough flexibility. We don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Okay.
And I don't want to limit it just to recreation if that's not what happens.
Okay, Doug?
I'm with Andrea on that. And I'm with the planning board on that, and I'm with the general statements on that.
I mean,
And this is no up yours to anyone, it's just a point that I thought it got shoved down our throat back in 2013.
Me too, but I loved it.
So, I mean, it would be great, and I'd be in support of it. If that were to be bought, then I would be in full support.
Yeah, I would love to see it
I would too.
at
Who
the
would?
state park
Who
or
would?
town park.
But at this point, why would you open up the threat of even the inkling of litigation and/or tax base loss.
Well,
When
let
they're
me-
paying a full boat right now.
You aren't opening that up by putting on the future land use map.
This is a wish list, it's not a zoning change, you can actually list it. This is
It's
not-
already listed.
Hold on,
This is
I
a-
get a chance to state my opinion.
Yeah, but I wasn't done
Okay, finish.
yet. I'm done.
Are you done? I propose that we put it on a general future land use map, like we're talking about, as part of a general wish list. And then we do not change the zoning.
Why don't we just change it to-
We leave it the
why don't we
way, the
just change
zoning
it
the
to
way
a
it
wish
is.
list then?
So that's what this is supposed to be.
Well,
It's
then just
supposed-
stated it that.
If you want to put a generic statement in there that we like recreational land.
It's already in there, page 38. It's in the plan now.
And pictures, most people read pictures more than words, and it's a visual.
Well, then now we
But you
won't,
don't-
but now we refer back to the descriptions that we have to go back through and read up to justify this. What's the difference? Nothing.
I believe that we felt it would be more supportive for actual flexibility when it comes to developing.
I'm not saying this isn't flexible.
And
There's a
that-
map like this that exists. It's on a huge board inside that office over there.
This is less specific, actually.
That's fine.
So,
No problem. That's great.
so if you just put
But there's
it,
one that exists in there that's already done.
it's a zoning map.
Right,
So this
but
is
you're,
not- We're trying to say, this is not the place to do zoning, but if you put it on a wish list, and the state looks at it, do they take it more seriously that we actually want that to happen?
Well, let me just
Let
say,
me-
from
let me just
my
ask that
experience
question.
working in comp plans,
Yes.
first of all, I like parcel data. I like property lines on the map so you know where things are.
Right.
Usually you look at existing, what's being used, how it's being used currently that day, and then you look at future changes that you're looking for. All the other plans I've worked on have been similar to the plan that we came together through the comp plan committee, the first one, the second one, and then the planning board. You know, those were the kinds of recommendations, the ways that I've been involved with them in other communities and things like that, so.
But if we're in conversations with the state, and we have a resolution, it makes sense to have it at least on the future land use map, but leave it as ag, Lake Shore, leave it the way it is zoning wise. There's no need to change the zoning because it's not on the table. But what it does, it just shows, it just replicates visually what we say in there. And it gives it weight when it, if the state is going to look at it seriously. That's my
In these
proposal.
matters, the state really looks at the town and says, what do you want? And if it's on the future land use map, the state's going to say, wow, the town really would like to have a state forest there. The town really would like to see that be more of a recreational use. The current owners will say, hey, that's how the town would like to see this area developed. Visually representing it makes a difference. That's why we put maps together.
But it doesn't restrict the owners of the property. It
Well,
doesn't
yeah.
change the zoning. It doesn't change the taxation. It's kind of a compromise.
Unless there's actually a proposal on the table, I'm not proposing that we change zoning at all. Until there's a proposal on the table, then we may have to do something. That's a whole different discussion. Right now, the public really would like to see this recreational, and a wide swath of the public, from what I saw at various meetings, would like to see this into a state forest. And I think it's important that we show that we're listening to them and represent it on the map the way people have repeatedly asked to just see it that way. It's not changing zoning, it's not opening us up for
It's not
lawsuits,
restricting
it's
anything.
not restricting anybody's use of anything. It's simply saying, we as a town would like to see that become recreational. That's what we'd like. This is our wish list. This is not something that we're pushing down on any property owner at all.
You speak as though the whole town wants to do this, when a lot of them are very concerned about the tax base. You assume the state will do this and the state will do that. You don't know. You don't know. And when you're dealing with people's tax base, what if you're wrong?
We're not changing the tax base.
What if you're wrong though? They see this and Iberdrola files for something else. But what if they see this? You don't know. When you're dealing with taxpayers' you have to be generic like the planning board was. They try to do wide lens because things can go south in a hurry. And you think you may know, and all of a sudden, here we go. And we're in trouble. We have a consensus here, looks like there's 3-2 to leave this alone. So let's move on. That's what I'm hearing. To the next issue.
We expressed our opinion, we haven't voted, we can have a vote now that people have heard, you know.
I guess the vote is, do you want to leave it the way it is?
So we need a formal vote to say we're going to leave.
To
Something
leave it
the way
and
it
move
is.
on, yeah, I think for us to
Or a
move
vote
on.
to say we're going to change it. I don't understand.
Vote to say we're going to adopt this future land use.
Well, if this is a wish list that people in the town, especially those who have come forth to the different meetings, and there wasn't a ton of people, but there were people, do they want this? Do they want to see, oh, okay, that's the wish. It may not come true, but there it is on a map, so that makes me feel better. Is that why we have this, to make people feel better?
And to express something to the state that we take it seriously.
Come visit me, I'll make you feel better. So.
Well, it's
I
an
mean-
intent by the town. If the state is going to take it seriously and purchase the property, there has to be someone to agree to sell it. It's not guaranteed, it's just...
Once again, another 45 minutes. Here we go over something that when you had the freezing for a reason, you weren't even allowed on the property. They stormed on the land, and the guy who let him in, lucky he didn't lose his job. We're assuming these things. We've had phone calls in the Iberdrola. Nothing's coming back. So we have resolutions saying we will accept this. We have all this stuff documented already. Why are we talking about this now? Why don't we move on and leave it? Because if something comes up in the future, I'll be the first one to have that emergency meeting and say, you know what? We got an opportunity to do something nice here. Let's move on it. But we don't have that. So we're doing the woulda, coulda, shouldas on here. If you want a wish list, you can put a wish list on this. This is our wish list of the 10 people that came to the meeting, or the 15 people that came to the meeting, or how many people are in these documents here. You know, are there 2,000? But we'll respect them and list them someplace if you want to put it as a wish list.
Well, let me reflect on you that there was less than 10 people complaining about the potential change on our future land use map of the Hillcrest parcel, and we backed up. We respected those few people, and this was a lot more people. So I just
John
wanna
Young
give-
respected that.
Yeah, John Young did, because I reached out to him, because finally I got in touch with the secret emails going around, which, you know, if you reach out to your elected officials, you might actually get some stuff done. But having said that, once again, are we chasing windmills here? I mean, are we going over stuff that's not going to happen?
Let's make a straw vote and move on to the next discussion.
Okay, I mean, if that's
If you
what
want
we're
to
going
leave it
to
as it is, just vote that way. Let's not talk about it anymore.
do. Okay? How many want to, go ahead, Mrs. Munson.
do it, are we making them?
I guess this is or is this a straw vote?
It's a
Is that what you
straw
want?
vote. I mean, we need to get stuff on the list and off the list.
I just want to point out that when you look at the poll that was done, the survey that was done of town residents, preserving open space was hugely popular, and they wanted the town board to take action on it. It's not a dozen people. A huge portion of the town is very
Huge portion.
But Joe, we did this in 2013. We addressed it. It's addressed. There's a resolution. What more can you ask in a resolution unless you do a local law? We addressed that if it is for sale. It is in the resolution already. It's there. We addressed it. Okay, straw vote.
Struggle for if you
If
want.
you leave it the way it is, or if you change the concerns about the Bell Station, I guess.
Okay, so say the vote would be to leave it the way it is, leave the land use map.
As recommended by the planning board for that.
As
that
recommended
issue.
by the planning board.
That's a nice way to put it.
Okay, all in favor?
Do you want to do it verbally?
I just want to
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I thought we were going person by person. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
just a
straw
straw
vote.
vote.
You're not approving anything, you're just trying to narrow down the issues, I guess, I don't know.
Yes,
The next,
exactly.
the next
Move
concern,
on.
next concern we had was that strip of land that started from Kohlenberg's up to Cargill. We've heard of that multiple times as far as changing the zoning for that, if that would be a concern. And Tommy, why don't you come on up here, because you know,
I can hear you.
are you okay? So the way that the planning board has set this up, it's a mixed.
It would be, we in the future would create a low impact business zone. So we have a B1 and a B2 now that have different businesses that are allowed or not allowed. I mean, that's not necessarily what we want for it. It is a scenic byway. Whatever's going in there, it's going to be very well landscaped. They're going to have shared driveways. You know, this was our concept of creating this low impact business zone to allow the use of that land by the owner for something that he actually could use it for. And let's face it, our town, you know, it was growing. We're going to need more business zone. If we want to walk and bike to these places, they got to be closer. They can't be up at Route 13.
So that would allow that to do that.
Yes. Your doctor's office, your lawyer's office, dentist maybe. I mean, we're not talking, you know, day-night grocery stores. That's not, wouldn't go there. I mean,
Could someone explain to me, because Michael talks about it all the time, that with the Dollar General store that came in long before I was on the board, you didn't want two cuts. You just wanted the people to drive off 34 and come around and come in. But there is one cut into 34. Why did that happen?
You want we set it up.
Because you talk about it all the
Trying
time.
to get them to use the side roads so that you have
Yeah,
fewer
and it
cuts.
made sense.
The state of New York allowed them to have a curb cut on Route 34. It's a state road. We can't restrict where they go in and out.
So they appealed and wanted
Well,
it.
they just submitted their application above us. Now, the planning board, and Larry Sharpstein's the major person behind it, and the rest of them
no,
talk
I
about.
was the major person behind it. I
Okay.
don't want to have a driveway in 34.
No, what I was trying to say was that you talked about an interconnected, so the next lot, hopefully
We
you
did.
can connect the dots together.
The next lot south of that has got to come through their parking lot.
Yeah.
Has to come through their
So the
parking.
lot south of those, if that's developed, they have to come through their parking lot. It's in the
Okay.
final, okay.
Because Michael just brings it up all the time, and I'm
Yeah, no,
thinking,
we.
it's something we didn't want, but it happened. So I didn't know how it happened. Thank you.
Say that corridor in down 34 in front of the school and whatnot, that still is a state road. The state can do whatever they want with anything they want.
Yeah.
So if somebody petitions that, obviously we can't stop that.
Well,
We can ask
at
and
the planning
and
board,
say we
yes.
didn't want it.
You gotta get tougher at the planning board, I won't say, no, you're not gonna do it. You're gonna share a driveway with this guy and this guy. That's just-
And if they say no, you could say, I'm sorry, you're not going to build it.
That's gonna be one of the objectives of that low density zone, is you're gonna do it or you're not gonna get your permit.
If you're gonna look to build there, you'll do your research, you hope ahead of time, to know what
Oh, yeah,
is
yeah.
allowed there and what isn't, and that would deter people from going there by saying, look, you can do this or you can't do this. So the way it sets now, because we're concerned about Mr. Kohlenberg's place doesn't turn another pit stop, where it just sits there. I mean,
Well, historically,
that's not too scenic.
back up, that used to be commercial. And when they did the zoning maps many years ago, they arbitrarily pulled 2,000 feet from the lake level. Suddenly, now he's in the L1 zone. But it used to be commercial right from the get-go, along with Rex's. You all remember Rex's?
Rex Sheffield, I do. Yes, that was Johnny Johnson actually, right?
Yeah, Johnny Johnson.
So the way it sits now, for the concerns of the people in the area, you want the density because you want the walkability. I mean, this is like the chicken and the egg where, okay, I want density, I want walkability, but I don't want it there. Well, if you're not going to have it in the schools, where else are you going to have it in that area? I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that if it stays the way it is now, does anything change as far as what they can and cannot do there, as if you change it from before?
Well, it's residential now. There's certain things you can't do. You can't have any commercial development in residential.
So a commercial mixed use there, as you guys stated, could it be rewritten or reset as a residential mixed use and have the same exact thing?
Well, you would allow, if you had a low impact commercial zone, you would allow residential in that. That would be one of the things you could put in a low impact zone.
Residential can be used anywhere. It's just where can you put a commercial use?
So I guess this
Well, it
school
makes
has
sense to me.
concerns, one, for traffic, and two, for allowable uses proximate to the school.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yes.
Why not?
Has the planning board talked with our superintendent and our school board about impact on our school community?
I think they're involved at some levels. We have talked to them before.
We actually asked for information probably 3-4 years ago and didn't get any response back. I mean, we did get some information, not a lot. And then we had to pull, the enrollment office, or the enrollment numbers off the website and things like that.
We have involved them before.
Okay, I don't know if you've ever been there when kids are coming onto the campus. And
I live behind the campus. And between the hours of 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning,
That's
I can't leave my driveway
That's right,
for fear of my life.
yes.
So don't tell me about traffic, it's already
I'm
there.
not telling you, I'm
Yeah.
asking you about
Yeah.
what kind of input.
No, we try to get involved because you have the number of students that are coming in and, can the school handle in the next 2 years 50 kids? I mean, we've had those discussions before. I don't know what we would do as a planning if the school said, no, we don't have any more room for kids.
Well,
Where does that
I'll tell
leave
you
us?
that will have a huge impact on taxes.
No, I know. But it's hard to get all those things together, line them up, but yeah, we have involved them before. They should be involved more probably,
Thank you.
together. There's no
Yes, I
question
agree
about
with
it.
that, thank you.
There's no question.
Being a state road, Route 34B, between here and the school, is there any possibility of sidewalks?
Of what?
Sidewalks?
It's a question of who wants to
It's
pay
a
for
question
it.
of money, and
Who wants
it
to
is a
pay for
state
it?
highway.
Yeah.
It
Because
was
if
hard
you
enough-
really want it walkable and safe
it was
for
hard enough to get the
kids
speed
or
limit.
whatever, you gotta have sidewalks.
Oh, I agree.
And we have to have something for the big saw trucks coming out too. That part isn't safe for kids to walk.
That's
So
never gonna
it's a
change.
problem. It's a problem. Yes, Marie?
Yeah.
When I was on the Pathways Committee, we met with Mary June King, and we met with state officials in regard to a bicycle walkable path from the school up to the town hall. And there were possibilities, and Mary June was very interested in all of that. They were also very interested in crossing safely in those areas down there. And those things, they were involved in conversation. We approached them, and Mary June brought in state officials from the state highway department. So there was funding, there obviously is funding, but one of the primary things is that the community has to be in sync with each other to get that money. And whether it's the grant that is currently, being worked on or a future one, the community has to be behind it. And it wasn't done.
Well, let me give you some information. I reached out to the Conlins, who basically own a lot of land, and it would be nice to, because they go all the way down to ADC, and they're not interested now. So I've approached them multiple times, and I can approach them again. But this is all noble causes, but until you have access to land, and I think one of the things we've done with our reserve fund is wait, stockpile the money, and when the time is right, to perhaps pursue that. But the landowner also is going to have to let go of their land.
That's all true, but if the community's behind it, it works much better.
I don't know what you mean by communities behind it when you have
I
your...
think because it's been so, when I was working on the committee, there were certainly people on the committee who were behind it, but there was not very good consensus to support that.
Well, this town board...
In answer to Andrew's question, those things are possible, but they are possible.
And it become more possible if you actually get some development along the highway that, as they're planning, you will put a sidewalk in.
Required.
Right,
Required sidewalk.
right.
But I think from safety standpoint,
Oh, yeah.
it's best to have a trail off the main highway.
No, absolutely.
So as we're thinking about, it's not just the Conlins property, there's 2 other properties that would connect down to Brickyard Hill, and those property owners might be interested in the multi-use commercial and be willing to give in trail easement across their properties. So
Well,
it's
probably-
worthy of a discussion.
I was going to say, the way to approach this actually is there is a grant program called the Safe Routes to Schools, It's through the enhancement program of the Department of Transportation. It's federal money. There's an 80% federal match that has been proposed to reduce to 20%, and then 15% from state. So if those are the new numbers, again, when it gets reconstituted, but they're going to look for feasibility studies. So if you have an engineering report that tells you exactly where it's going to be, where the easements are, people have signed off on it, then you apply for the grant. So it takes you probably 2 or 3 years to put that
There's a lead
concept
time,
together.
yes.
So maybe that's part of the trail
We're at the
plan.
beginning of that.
So getting back to this, because I don't want to be here.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you. The way it stands now is that Kohlenberg's property in that area would be commercial. Is that what you're proposing down the road, hopefully? And that the other area would be, rather than avoid the accusation of spot zoning, would be a mixed use up to Cargill, knowing that this is almost like that R3 where they overlap each other, really, that you really can do pretty much both in the same area. I guess I'd ask the consensus of the board how you feel about this, if we should leave it the way it is, or if we should change it.
At the moment, I don't feel the commercial mixed use should go from Kohlenberg's up to Portland Point Road.
Where do you recommend it should be then? Do you think it should just be Kohlenberg's changed?
Kohlenberg's I don't have a problem with them maintaining some commercial status. And then buffering the school so there's not options for increasing traffic right there across from the schools. And there's also the sight line of the hill, Brewville, so it makes sense to have mixed-use commercial beyond that sight line curve, in my belief. So Portland Point Road on up to Rogues Harbor
Yeah,
could all be mixed-use commercial.
I like Katrina's suggestion.
Doug?
So we're spot zoning Kohlenberg?
I would call it a zoning adjustment.
I think we're honoring what it's been, so it's not spot zoning if you're not making it a
Well,
zone.
the whole point of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, it was so he would not, if he wanted to improve it, he would not have to get a.
If he wants to make his business grow.
Right, he's got to go through from the
he's gotta go to
ZBA
ZBA.
I'm fine with allowing a zoning change to allow
that for the
Yes.
historical area. That is a historical.
commercial.
Just the one parcel, you want to have 2 parcels, or you just?
Well, it would be 2, I think, because of the.
Up to the gully, that'd be the natural boundary.
Right, the gully is a natural boundary.
Go ahead.
A couple of things. One is, one of the goals of a comprehensive plan is to account for the population density and growth that's going to occur. So saying you don't want the growth is irrelevant if it's coming anyway. You have to figure out where it's going to go and how you're going to manage that. As far as the zoning thing, that's up to you guys to decide, but I might suggest that if there is an issue that you consider maybe do a tweak to the language. I guess I would defer to you, I would defer to Tom, that in regards to the length and size of this zone, that maybe you consider it as a floating zone district, that you don't know where the commercial is going to site, but a certain amount of it is the maximum amount that will be allowed in that area, and once it's identified where it'll be, that floating zone will attach and nothing else will become commercial. Again, you're getting into zoning at that point, but you could limit through the use of site planning where that floating zone would park.
So once again, I may be guilty of my own accusations here of focusing on something specific when we're trying to do conceptual. And sometimes you get involved in the minutia and you realize that we're talking about one person's property for another 15 minutes when actually conceptually, once again, wide lens, how do we look at the wide lens with this and move on and let the next phase happen?
Well, so we aren't zoning tonight, so
So
why not move
if
on?
we're discussing a future land use map, there used to be more commercial to the west side of Auburn Road between Drake and Rogues Harbor. And it was bumped back to a thinner area.
On the west side of the
It
road?
used to cut more across. There was more potential for commercial there. Because that's a big empty space. It's going to be central of sewer ever goes through. It makes sense that if we're trying to have density, that we do it in the center of our business district. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so how do we do it conceptually? I mean, because we're not doing zoning tonight. How do you do it conceptually where we'll let the planning board and whoever else wants to jump in on this afterwards come up with more specific recommendations?
Well, this was part of my idea of having the Cuba Lake Scenic Byway be a general idea of it's going to have housing, it's going to have businesses. We're not specifically saying what happens here other than we want to connect it to the community, we want to connect it to the scenic byway idea. And then we can sit down at zoning level and say, what do we do with this parcel? What do we do with this parcel? What do we do with this parcel? Do we do a floating zone? Do we, that's when we work on the details of how to build our community.
Okay.
Not now, because we don't have time to sit parcel by parcel and figure it out. And that's the problem when you try to have your future land use map work like a zoning map. If it's so specific, if every parcel is specifically cited out, then you end up doing this. Should this parcel be in this zone? Should it be in the next zone? Should this parcel be in commercial? Should it be in residential? That's not what the future land use map's about. That's what, when we sit down and do the zoning, we're going to sit down and work out parcel by parcel exactly what it is and what are the districts going to be and what exactly is allowed and what's not. That's when you do that kind of detail. Not now, because we'll spend the next month, if we go parcel by parcel, we can meet every day for a month and still not work through all the parcels here and figure them out at that level.
So having said that, can we leave it the way it is and move on?
I'm not really happy with this long blue line going all the way across here. I think that the school district is very worried about it. And I'm suggesting we take the concept of the Cuba Scenic Byway and just strike 34, 34B with that and leave the individual details as to what happens to the zoning time and not try to work out the details, not say that it's going to be commercial now and then have to discuss, well, should we make all of this commercial later? Should we? This is my attempt to take that discussion and put it at the time we're doing the zoning changes, which is when it's appropriate.
Yes, so that, back to the make it general. And when you're doing specific zoning discussions, as you move forward, then I assume you would invite people that would be affected to the discussions, like the school.
Okay, so how do we tweak this so we can move forward?
Didn't we have a general statement in our proposal that included those two areas with exploring the possibility of creating a low-impact commercial zone anyway? Didn't we have that in our proposal?
We had an area that was low-impact mixed use, which is where those triangles were.
Right. And didn't
we probably redesignate that coming over to that area if you want to do it that way.
Is that workable?
I don't know. I thought it was general enough to allow.
Are circles crossed enough that we can?
Can we add the scenic byway designation, just
Sure.
which would allow us when we're doing the zoning to think about form-based zoning?
It's described in there already. It's just a question you want to put it on the map.
I want to put it on the map.
Yeah.
Say this whole area is going to be developed.
Is that no
The
problem?
thought
We'll add that on the
is
map.
a scenic class.
Everybody agrees to that.
Okay. That's okay.
Got some momentum here.
Okay. Sounds
The
good.
green stripe is being added, it's going to wipe
Hold
out.
on,
Yeah.
glad you came, Tommy, tonight. We got some momentum here. We might just get this done by
Exactly
midnight.
how it's part of the.
You writing this down, Michael?
Scenic byways on the map.
Okay.
Got a tape? Okay, rock and
Okay.
roll. All right. 2 down, 4,899 to go. Okay. I'm trying to think of by memory the other concerns that were mentioned. We talked about Hillcrest area. Do you want to also include, even though Jack Young, they have it right and he doesn't want to pursue this?
I think it ought to be mentioned in this plan, just because I think it needs to exist. If we don't get a comprehensive plan for 10 or 12 or 15 years, I mean, development's coming. I think
So it also says that the zoning is not changing.
Right.
It is a wish.
you
Wish.
mentioned,
It's a potential.
we will look at that area as for some type of use.
Okay.
Lowest
Are
impact use.
we okay with adding that also in the triangle to this other area?
So keep the triangles on, is what you're saying.
Drop the triangles.
Something that blends well with residential.
You'll drop the triangles, but it'll be redefined in the future.
Yeah.
We're going to do detail at a future level. This is not parcel by parcel time.
I understand, but it came up in that discussion because Hillcrest came up in that discussion. All right, What else do we have concerns about specifically from people who came here and voiced their concerns, so we have at least some sort of record?
I would like a straw vote on a conservation advisory board, which I know you came out strongly against, but I think in our discussion, we talked about it being a helpmate to the planning board, not a ruling body. And
I
it's
can live with
important
that.
how it's set up.
No, it is important how it's set up, and the trail committee worked very well. You know, they dealt with the developers, and they brought back recommendations.
Right.
I just don't want to get to the point in the town of Lansing, our little town.
We don't want to
where
be
this-
Ithaca.
Where this CAB has says, you will do this, you know, you will
No.
protect that flower and rose or something. I just.
So what teeth does a advisory board have?
I have a proposal here that I passed out.
Can we get what
Well,
teeth
let's-
does
Well,
an advisory
there's a
board?
distinction between a conservation advisory committee and a conservation advisory board.
Oh,
For a conservation advisory board to actually have input on something, first you have to get the work of a conservation, usually, first you have to get the work of a committee done. You need a conservation advisory committee to do the land inventories, the open space inventories, to study these issues, to make recommendations, to incorporate them in your comprehensive plan, so you can assume that's probably a couple of years off. And then if there is, once the things are there, once there's a plan in place, once there's a need to protect what's identified, whether it's significant natural communities, wetlands, open spaces, historic districts, scenic byways, whatever it is, then you put a conservation advisory board in and review them with whatever review or recommendation authority you want.
Are
the way
they
that the
just
general-
recommending, or are they gonna review and approve?
Well, it depends on what authority you give them, but until you actually have the data that a conservation advisory committee is supposed to generate, you don't you're not necessarily in a position to have a conservation advisory board. But the law doesn't specify that you do it in that way. It's just the way that the general municipal law is written. There's a progression to how you get this done. Normally, but not always, you start with a committee and inventory what is there that needs protection, and let's figure it out. It's sort of like if you're going to try to build a town hall, normally you first start looking at what do we need, how do we build it, how many rooms do we need, what's our square footage. You don't just start digging the foundation. So that's.
so we're talking about a conservation advisory committee, and you had a
It says
proposal.
board, but we could switch the language
Okay.
easily.
Yeah, I think you could probably say both if you wanted, but a committee is the information gathering advisory body. It is strictly an advisory body. It's not an official quote-unquote board. If you want to go to a conservation advisory board because the committee, for good or for ill, identifies things that don't need protection or things that do need protection, then the town board, whether it's this board or some future board, would decide whether or not the committee would continue on in an advisory capacity or whether you wanted to get more formal and have a conservation advisory board. The main reason that a lot of communities are choosing to have at least one of these entities, you're not required to have both, you're not required to go to the next level, is because it does open some funding doors for things that are helpful on a preservation level, like lakefront improvements, pathways, purchasing conservation easements, transfer of development rights projects, things like that.
I would think just as an information source, that would be extremely helpful to start with, to get somebody's eyes and ears where what's going on out there.
More worker bees.
I'm.
Well, you set
Yes,
by
exactly.
resolution the parameters and goals of that committee. You tell it what its authority is, what you want
Well,
it
similar to
do.
what we did with the Ag Committee.
Right.
We
Correct.
Basically set up with the rules, this is what
I
you're gonna
would-
look at.
What I would like to
Numbers,
do
terms.
is put the verbiage in here. And then whenever, but also I'd like to do it, move forward on this from a board
From an
standpoint.
active resolution
And
standpoint.
start now.
Let's do it.
And I'd also like to have a diverse group. There may be a member of the planning board on it also. If they want ZBA, certainly a town board member,
A farmer,
a farmer,
hunter,
entrepreneur, whatever. But I
ecologist.
want, since we have 4 corners of diversity, I'd rather have them all equally represented because sometimes you're quite surprised what you learn.
Right.
So having said all that, what the language is, we have the concept.
Right.
from the concept, from the plan.
Let's go, make it happen.
Okay, so I propose that Mike and I tweak my language to kind of conform with what's being said, and we can just work.
Email to us so we can look at it, and maybe we can have something agreeable
Are you okay with that?
by our next.
By next week.
by
That'd be
next
great.
week.
Okay,
Okay?
before 1 o'clock on
Get it out.
I can't sit there and read emails all day because I
You
do
got
stuff
work.
with my hands.
I
So I
understand.
can't pull it up and go.
I
So,
understand.
And I don't
You
get
get
understand-
accused of tweeting.
Yeah.
And I'm not tweeting.
you got the carrot, Joe, you got the carrot,
I
okay?
just want Doug to understand, I spent a lot of time putting this together.
I understand, obviously you have, but
And you
we
know
were
what, once
promised
again-
this a long time ago as well.
You know, Joe, once again, it might be the right idea, just the wrong time. So what I'm saying is that we're trying to,
We all agree on this.
yes,
So let's do it.
yes,
Yeah, let's get,
let's enjoy the moment
let's
here.
kick that, kick that can.
Why don't we go outside and slug it out? What?
Doug, when do you want this in your email?
I want it a week before.
You can't.
Well, too bad, that's what I want.
Because you want it, because it's next week.
Yeah, you don't want to have this conversation next
Monday.
week.
As long as I get it tonight.
Okay.
I mean, give me a chance
So are
to.
you talking about a resolution for the next meeting, or just?
Yes.
Well, verbiage to
No,
put,
no,
verbiage to put
No,
into the.
no, we want the, no, we want the verbiage
We're
done.
talking about it.
We want the verbiage done for the comp plan, so we're comfortable with that. But it's on our homework assignment to get this thing done soon.
We don't want to have a resolution next Wednesday.
That we
We're gonna
intend
have
to
this
Do you see her
committee.
eyes? You see her eyes? I mean, you're not in the
Oh,
building as
sorry.
much as I am. She's at the tipping point.
Okay, how about this, we'll do a resolution for the following regular meeting.
What are we saying?
Well,
No, we're talking about
do it for
the
the same
comp.
night you adopt the comp plan?
Yeah,
Let's have
we're
it for-
trying to get, we're trying to get this
We will
stuff
adopt
going
the
here.
comp plan
I don't-
in the May meeting,
What
period.
will you say, guy?
I'm just
Tapping
gonna
the brakes.
suggest that, yeah, no, I mean, it's just because you're talking about a resolution and you're not at the point, what I think you should be doing, as I said before, is I think you should be developing what is the near to final 99% version of the comprehensive plan. So if you're coming to consensus on what that might look like based on changes that either have support or don't have support tonight, why don't we just at least have something that's near to final in everyone's hands so we're in a position to do final seeker analysis, final review. Should that comma be there? Should it be a dash? Whatever it is.
This will be rewritten by Tuesday, that'll give you a night to look at it, and then at Wednesday's meeting, we can kind of discuss and see if there's more tweaking that needs to get done.
To the Conservation Advisory Committee.
Yeah, that's on my
So,
report.
but
You're talking the section that's going in the comp plan, you're
Yeah,
not talking
that's
about.
right.
the
That's
resolution.
right.
I have, at this point, I have no problem with it going into the comp.
Right, but you want to see it before we,
Well,
yeah, that's right, let's get,
Courtesy, yeah.
I'll get it to you Tuesday night.
Why don't we put all the changes together? and
Right, no, I'm just, that's on your, my work
I
list.
mean,
Now
we're
we're
getting
going
into minutia when we want to be coming up with a final.
This is conceptual,
Right.
okay? We'll work on the details later.
Yeah.
So we made some good progress there. What else is it that we're tripping over?
Well, let's just take a moment, review concepts that we have.
Can I just ask one question, go back to the area by the school, do you want to turn that into the low impact mixed use?
This is gonna be all that, what do you call it, cube scenic byway, which is going to allow for a lot of different possibilities.
Is this a width? I mean, is it?
Yeah, it's about 250 feet, it's just, a swath through there, I'll help you with that.
Well, okay, how's the rest of the board feel? Do you want to do it 300 like they recommend other places? Or
Well,
300
you've got
strip?
300 for your water districts now.
That would be consistent.
Yes, we do.
Guy, would that be consistent?
Whatever you.
Personally,
Well,
Or is that-
Mike's asking a different question than I think is being
yes.
answered. So, is it consistent?
So why don't you ask,
Consistent with
okay,
what?
answer his question.
Well, his question was, what do you want to do with the commercial zone? Everyone is agreeing that the byway is going to be on the map, and it's going to have various impacts based upon the description that it has, some of which is really zoning oriented and some of which is not. Mike is asking about, are you planning on eliminating the commercial district, scaling it back to where Katrina left it, converting it to low impact and leaving it there with the byway as a further overlay on,
Right.
making sure what low impact commercial goes in there is consistent with scenic byway. Scenic byway, the language does have commercial, and office uses, it actually has the same type of use descriptions in it as does some of the low-impact commercial. So I think Mike is looking for whether or not there's congruence between those that you could leave both on the map, or whether you're just completely eliminating one in favor of the other.
My understanding is we're putting the scenic byway over it all to kind of kick the can down the road and decide it parcel by parcel at a later date
In the zoning.
in the zoning discussion.
Yep.
So,
For
The
both?
byway overwrites everything that's on there right now, and we'll deal with the individual parcels later as a cohesive unit as we're going down the road, figuring out what we want to do in terms of zoning changes. And, you know, that way we can bring the school in, talk about what's happening around them, and make those decisions when we have time to work out each individual section of that, as opposed to, hey, what do you think of this, what do I think of that?
So should the byway be striped so you can see the color of the zones under it?
I want to eliminate the zones under it because.
Oh, you're limited,
then it's
that's,
not an overlay district.
No, I'm not saying it's an overlay
Okay.
district, I'm saying.
That was the
Well, you want to have clarity.
I'm saying what I understood.
That didn't answer your question?
Well, I think guys trying to hit on it, my personal preference as a planner is to try to follow property lines so that you can try to figure out
You
what's
mentioned that
potential
before
where.
within the water districts too.
Yeah, and that's
And
why
that doesn't
we already work.
necessarily always jive, it probably very rarely.
Yeah, well, here you do some strange things. You got that 2,000 square foot line for the water.
This doesn't have to follow property lines because it's not zoning, we're not saying this is happening in this exact area.
No,
We're
it's
saying
just,
this is what's
there's a
happening.
consistency.
When we come to
I
the
think
zoning,
There's a consistency. Yeah, you're right, but there's consistency. Like, well, okay, if that's 300 feet, it makes sense to be 300 feet, not 200. It doesn't matter.
300 feet's fine, that's a minor detail, if you want to make it 300 feet, I'm fine with that. What it does is it
Wait,
No, go on.
I want to interrupt, I didn't know he wasn't on the go.
What it does is it basically envelops the properties that are along there. There might be some corners that stick out here and there, but that's not what we're worried about at this level. What we're worried about is
Just
what's
guiding
happening in the
principle.
area, and then when we get to zoning, we'll sit down and we'll think about each of those corners. And
No, that's great, and I think just for the sake of moving this along, I have no issue with that.
Good. Hold on.
Trails.
Okay.
I got a whole section about trails that I'd like to add.
Go ahead.
That's going to be all in there.
No, I understand that, but which are the four things that you sent us? Is this?
This is under new items. Go to the page that says education on the front and turn to.
Okay, so show me your front page. Insert. Okay. And in the future, this is not a criticism, this is a Tom Jones comment. Can you put numbers on these pages? All right.
I'm with you there.
I mean, if that's doing criticism that you end up with tonight, this will be a great night, huh? Okay, so which page are we on?
We're doing this page. Just take the staple down, pull this page. down.
Remove. Okay.
Pull the page.
This page?
This page.
Okay.
What does it say in the box?
Remove paragraphs 2, 3 on page 59.
oh, there it is.
Okay, so what is different from what was in there before? Is this all different?
This removes a couple of paragraphs and adds a whole section about that. I think
So this is different than the section that Katrina wrote years ago.
I don't remember what Katrina wrote years ago.
And you know what? I don't care.
Well, I think you're laying the foundations, what you're doing. Eventually, if the opportunity arises, then you have a serious discussion about adopting those areas. So, all right, so I'm looking at this one page, right, front and back?
Yep,
And your proposed changes are in the yellow?
but here's what the proposed changes are. These 2 paragraphs get struck, all this gets stuck in, and then this stuff changes on page 59, where there's or on page, 65, where the goals.
Which paragraph are you talking about?
These 2, it says the first, remove paragraphs 2 and 3,
On page
and
59.
insert this. Did everybody else catch that, or did I need to come over and help?
I thought we talked. Well, we sort of.
It's just a little more specific
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So include this entire page in there.
Yeah.
Well, where's that with all the pictures on it?
This is the,
I'm pulling out the comp plan.
this is
Oh,
your comp
so I
plan
don't
itself.
have that.
In the,
You don't have it with you, it's,
I know, it's in there, but I don't have that with me, sorry.
Did you want to see the page?
No, I'll just look at it later.
Okay, I mean, that's, I've got the page numbers up there that describe it.
So you're taking out paragraph 2 and 3 and inserting all of this?
Yes.
Is that?
Yes.
that changed up the number and everything, so,
Is it- Yeah,
And the pages will change.
yeah.
well, we gotta change it.
that's inevitable.
Well, everybody holler when they're through reading. I have one concern,
Okay.
question, comment, whatever you want to call it.
Lost my pen.
And we are going to be appointing a task force. We're close.
I didn't say
But I
that.
want to get past this plan. This is
I mean,
something a lot of time out of my life.
aren't you in charge?
So
I
that's
mean,
it, yes.
I mean,
The
didn't we
last
have that
paragraph.
discussion like,
That's happening.
yeah,
So-
so, okay.
I don't know if we need the last paragraph since it's happening.
I mean, that's what the reserve fund was for, that's what the
Yeah.
master plan was
Yeah.
for. I mean, so that's already implemented. The language I have in the second paragraph, which says the town of Lansing can exploit its ability under New York State town law, and in some cases require developers of residential subdivisions to dedicate land for public park and open spaces, including land for private. I mean, all this is a noble cause, how you want to connect things. I got that. But it sounds like we have the ability to force. And from
How would you like to change it?
And if
we would,
Soften it up.
well,
Yeah,
yes, I mean, all the developers that I have, they say, what do you need?
okay.
What do you need?
and
They
if they're reading it
require,
looking for business,
Right,
we don't
right.
want to scare them away.
How
well,
about I suggest this? We accept this concept, you tweak that to make it more comfortable for you by next Tuesday night, and then we
is
can...
that okay with you, Doug?
No.
Okay. No, what I would say here is simply, rather than require, and I've had this discussion with Maureen when we first started this Pathways Back, is to not require, but request.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Which line?
request, this is the second line, you just,
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's a nicer word.
that's it. Because you're kind of nudging them as you're dragging them
I'm
along.
fine with that.
Good, all right.
And why do we need the one about rails to trails? Why do we need that paragraph?
I had a question.
In the
Yes.
interest of keeping the plan short.
I quickly read through those before I came to the house. The impression is that nothing's being done now. And it's absolutely false, because we work with developers, and we put language in there saying we will continue to require or work with developers to advance the Lansing trails. And I think that's the language we had in there, but the way it's written now, it's like we're doing nothing. We're sitting here saying, we're not gonna do anything. And that kind of was an affront to the board, because every developer that walks through there, we say, let's look at trails.
Okay.
Well,
And we do it.
Except when you go to the
Oh,
fourth
yeah,
paragraph, it
Maureen-
talks about
Maureen's
all the
in
stuff
on
we're
this.
doing.
well, I would just like to make the comment that Pathways people used to meet and consult with the developer, and as an advisory, work with them on their plan and come back to the board with that information. But now, there's very little work done on the broader aspects of trails in Lansing. It's been narrowed down to Friends of the Trail, which is just a group that is across the road. So you need to resurrect.
And we are. That's,
you know,
That's in process.
The larger committee for the broader picture of trails.
exactly.
There were some committee problems, though.
Well, I'm
And,
not gonna go into.
Yeah, I know.
But you're correct, and
But
we're
the board
actively
did pick
working
this
on
up.
it.
The big picture
Yeah.
of trails
Okay.
depends on a committee that works on the big picture and not just the small.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And a master plan that
Yes.
then the developers and the
Master
planning
plan
board
shows-
can work with.
The
We're right
plan is
there.
pretty much there.
Yeah,
We
right
just
there.
gotta get this,
Okay, but do we need paragraph 3?
Do you need?
rails and
Rails
trails.
and trails.
We're also trying to keep the comp plan short.
If you want to remove paragraph there.
Yes, we need paragraph
Okay.
Is that what unfortunately is
Yep,
Yep.
the rails to trails?
3. We don't have it.
okay. Is that softened enough to?
Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Why don't you also mark down in paragraph in order to continue to.
Yes.
To continue.
That's good. That's good,
Continue
Michael.
to.
Okay.
Continuing support.
Do you hear that, Tom? In order to continue to provide support for the planning committee, we're continuing. So we're acknowledging this exists already. Thank you. Okay, I guess we're gonna take a 3-minute break to let some air in the room and go from there.
So this one that says education.
Yeah.
Look on.
Education and
It's the part you ripped off of the other one.
Top says
Well, I guess I
education.
didn't rip it off.
It's part of the comment.
Yeah.
Probably an answer.
I have it here, show me.
Yeah, it's still there.
Is that? Nope. Insert N? Okay, done.
Got it.
Got it. This right here, environmental
Want to take
protection.
a moment to read it? This is in addition
Right
to
Okay,
existing conditions and considerations.
okay.
Education, health, and heavy industry has some topics.
We'll do one at a time.
Let's do education.
Do we want to wait for Mike to come back, or we'll read?
We're reading, we can read.
We sort of, the third little paragraph, we sort of talked about quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
For the development around the schools.
School.
Oh my gosh, that's a dead horse. This will be in more detail later.
So we have to reach out to the school district to work with them.
I think if any major potential impact, they should know about it. Shouldn't be.
Well, and they should be more forthcoming to
Right,
us.
they
too.
should come here.
Because-
It's an open meeting.
We have some problems with the library that should be better
Like the-
between the library.
The
and
bottom,
school.
the bottom row of the.
Well, and then I might point out that the recreation department works with the school
A
all
lot,
the time.
Yeah.
So that's a.
It is,
a move.
it's already
That's a
robust.
move.
Well, it's already there in many ways. We've also met, I mean, a lot of times Steve Coates is the conduit between the town and the schools.
Maybe you want to squeeze it or continue in there somewhere?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Maybe,
similar
why don't we offer up once again an olive branch and say, you guys can come to a meeting.
Well, I see what you're saying, Joe.
They did today.
Therefore, it is important that the town work with the school district to continue the availability of robust.
There you go.
Yeah, that's good.
Where are you now?
Last page is
Education.
under education.
To continue the availability.
Insert at the end of existing conditions. Where are you on?
This one?
Yeah.
Just like I said, it is imperative that the town of Lansing Central Education providers continue to share information
Sure.
regarding economic development, land use development, and demographic. But in so the school district may have more tools necessary to deliver high quality education. I mean, we're doing this already. We're trying to get our tax base up because of the
Right.
concerns we have. So I think this is a recognition of doing it. Also, the fact that we move forward. The first paragraph, while there is a school board that runs the school system, the town does make decisions that affect the education of its residents,
Not the education, the
the
well-being.
the well-being, the tax base, the.
We affect the school district. We accept-
Yeah, we affect the
we affect them.
I get what you're saying. I just
But we don't offer educational programs except
That
through the
affects
school,
the-
through the library.
and put in.
Well, it does affect the education because of budgetary stuff. That's your point.
Mhm. School district, would that work better?
the town doesn't make, well, you already got the school board that runs the school system, the town does make decisions that affects.
The school district.
Well, be
The
careful,
school?
we have more than one school district in our town. That's true.
It affects the overall well-being of its residents.
It's hard for me to give up my copy.
Oh, here.
Overall well-being.
So you should put both school districts in here, or just?
I
That
did look at
affects
it, I did-
He didn't say,
Or we want to say in general, the relationship.
yeah,
Make
he
decisions
didn't
that
specifically
can
say
affect
Lansing Central
the-
School
No.
District.
Okay, no, I'm just, some of the discussion was going with these.
You say
schools.
Lansing schools, central schools, but there's another school district.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just like
Yeah.
school boards and school systems,
Yeah,
plural,
South
just
Seneca,
say
I think
affects the
Seneca,
school
there's a couple
districts.
of and then there's Ithaca.
Ithaca.
There you go.
Say that again, you want to just cross off the name, Lansing Center?
Little piece there. Then where do I put Lansing? Oh, down below, yeah.
You know it does.
I think it does, I think part of the Groton School District cuts in over in that
East
one
Groton
corner
Road,
over near.
And Southern Cayuga does it near where we are.
Right, there's actually 4
School districts.
Districts, yeah, Dryden does too, on Schofield Road, right? Whoville, Dryden's on one side and Dryden's on the other.
Is this little tail in the city school district?
Maybe, might be Ithaca by
Southern
Verizon.
Cayuga has this.
No.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if this is Ithaca City down.
Down here,
Or a
right?
little tail.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a section down there, whatever it is.
Okay, so let's just generalize it.
Just school districts.
Which
And then,
paragraph are you in?
The last one, the first one and the last one both need to be generalized more. The first one would just make school boards and school systems plural, and then decisions that affect the school districts. And the last one, we need to stop focusing on Lansing School District and just make it school districts.
You got those out when it says continue, not continue, Michael?
Now, you've also got like a 2-sentence paragraph here, or two, that do you want to merge them together? I mean.
Yeah, make them
let's try
like
to-
real paragraphs.
That's fine.
They're broken up, so you can adjust that.
Or just short things, okay, well, you know.
I was working
These
quickly.
guys-
That's really just a formatting.
I understand, I was working quickly. I'm fine.
No, this is a rough draft, it's okay.
Yeah. So can we check that one off and say, okay, we're,
Yep.
On the health,
No, we just did education. Now
yeah,
we're
as
gonna
I'm
do-
saying,
Now we're gonna do health and then we'll do welfare.
I didn't write that one.
Hurry, okay. All right, we're in health?
Do you really have to have the justification? So you do
I
a huge justification.
I'm sorry.
Do we really need the justification?
she's editing words to keep it short.
Yeah.
If you want to take it out.
That paragraph?
Yeah, I don't,
Um,
I mean, you could say just,
You can
That-
boil it down, couldn't you?
yeah, that the town is, you know, since we serve other
Okay.
people, we also serve them, like for education, but we also are concerned about their health.
Okay, how about if we just take that first sentence and put it on the second, at the beginning of the second
You
paragraph?
could. It's-
Critical
And then
aspect
the-
of planning is health, perfect.
And then the second paragraph, that first sentence doesn't make sense, so we need to figure out what we're saying. In order for Lansing to encourage increases physical
Lansing
activities.
to encourage,
Something's missing.
to encourage.
So you have a community's plan for housing, transportation, land use, parks, and economic development may impact a community's health, may impact.
Okay, we're dropping the.
No, we're gonna just do the very first
Okay,
sentence.
that's fine.
Gets it down
Less
to
is
the
more.
second
Critical
paragraph.
aspect of planning is health.
Okay.
Okay,
And
we
then,
know that.
In order for Lansing
Lansing
to
to
encourage increased.
Increased
Is there supposed to be a
physical
D on the end of
activity,
that?
that's
Yeah.
better.
Are you taking out this first paragraph, is it?
We're taking the
Yeah.
first
The
sentence.
whole thing.
Except the first sentence.
First sentence getting tagged onto there.
She's a good editor.
Okay. Because, and then you get rid of the rest of this?
The rest of it's going away.
Okay.
Hey, Mrs. Benson is an English teacher.
I'm not blood related.
Ah.
I'm not.
She was dynamic in her own way, I'm
She
just
was very
saying.
strict. Well,
She knew which side you were on, her side.
she didn't like my kids at all.
Really, I won,
No, federal CDC.
And they all ended up
you guys are healthcare.
to write
I
okay.
mean, you guys are probably.
Not in her class.
All right, so the first sentence, you're going to keep the first sentence, and then this goes, right?
Yeah,
In order for
in
Lansing
order
to
to encourage increased physical, to encourage, I would say just to encourage physical activity. Why do you have to say increases?
Okay,
Yeah.
Encourage physical activity.
Encourage
It's not
physical
past tense,
activity, yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just fine, it's fine.
and that's it? What about the rest of the sentence? Do I keep all that too?
Physical persons need safe and accessible areas, development of these areas can be.
Do you want to reference the recreation program that the town has? I mean, this is what their bread and butter is.
Sure.
Community environments to increase their.
That's what they do, is they provide all these
You're right,
activities.
right, Parks and Rec.
Well, as you go all the way down to the end where it says, as it stops, the second sentence from the, maybe make reference to the rec department there.
In developing programs, the rec department, Town of Lansing Rec Department
Sure.
develops programs to encourage people, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Where do you want that put?
This personal choice.
Why don't you get rid of, just a suggestion, in order of, and just say the Town of Lansing Recreation Program.
As a thought, isn't health something?
Okay, the Town of Lansing Recreation Program is what?
Can't we have
Encourage
personal
responsibility.
responsibility?
Good, so it's read in order for Lansing, you put the Town of Lansing Rec Department?
15%.
I never,
Okay. Good.
I don't even think, I'd say more than that.
I know what kids said.
Encourages,
Fail.
Encourages,
Control the PE.
increased,
well, we dropped increased.
okay, encourages physical activity. Okay, good.
Period. No?
Doesn't the county deal with it?
And then persons need safe and accessible areas.
How about you take out persons need and say, increased physical activity, safe and accessible. I'll just take that line out.
Yeah, okay.
Persons needs, you don't need that.
Facilitators then.
And then the next one with a capital D, developing of these areas can be aided, or continued development.
Yeah, that's good.
You paid attention to Miss Benson's class.
You did.
For the clear of my life. The adrenaline is a great motivator.
Would you have a ruler?
She was big and she was fierce and she didn't mind showing.
Stop
sure she did this, too.
Oh,
And then continued development of these areas.
continued development of the areas can be aided by determining environmental blah, 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 blah. I would just take out the last part without the contribution.
Yeah, I would too.
You've already addressed it.
These
Yes.
areas.
Okay, but I thought they were putting the rec department in down there.
Yes.
No, the rec department's at the beginning.
Okay.
The rec department
Okay.
encourages, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's how we get, that's how we roll. All right, next page.
Who's the other day?
Pedestrian bicycle right now.
I don't think you need all that. Pedestrian and bicycle safety programs also illustrate the interdependence of everything. I just think we would like more trails.
Okay, how about if we just take that last line and stick it on the.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then the
I agree.
last line needs some adjustment.
Some adjustment.
Lansing needs to be more, Lansing needs to create more.
Create more.
We're just using the last sentence.
How about Lansing aspires to?
Aspires to.
I love
Oh,
it.
very
Doug.
He buzzed
I
there.
got one.
We're in the
I
middle
got
of
one.
it.
Oh, it was a home run.
Aspires instead of needs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Lansing aspires to create more.
Pedestrian and bike paths.
Everybody driving their car everywhere we did.
Pedestrian trails and bike paths.
So you got pedestrian trails, comma,
bike paths,
and,
and green
yes.
spaces.
Yeah, okay.
Is that the beginning of a new paragraph? Is
No,
that-
it's
is
just
that-
No, it's the end,
Yeah.
it's the end of the second paragraph.
Pedestrian and bike paths, is that what you're saying?
Pedestrian
Trails,
trails, comma, bike
bike
paths,
and
and
green
green spaces.
Lansing needs to create more pedestrian trails. Lansing aspires to create more pedestrian trails, comma, bike paths, and green spaces. Okay.
Community for many reasons, including promoting a more healthy. That sounds good, that's a nice one.
And where's that going at the end of the other paragraph?
Yeah, the
Yes.
end of the last paragraph.
Yes. Just the paragraph we shortened from.
That's the only sentence that we're keeping on that whole
On that
paragraph.
side, on that side.
That's fine.
On the back side, it's okay.
Okay, contamination.
Well, you didn't shorten the previous paragraph.
Yeah, we did.
No, we dropped the first paragraph except for the first.
Right, the first one, but you're putting this at the end of the previous paragraph, right? You
Right.
didn't shorten that one.
Well, we did actually, we took out without the contribution of both disciplines. We took that whole
Oh, I
sentence
missed
out.
that part.
Thank God we got it taken care of.
I can feel Debbie's migraine coming
Well,
on.
that sentence, that sentence is out.
My hand's starting to curl.
Yep.
All right, contamination of drinking water. How about, just start with, it's vital that the town take measures to ensure clean drinking water,
There you go.
not only
I
for
like
current
it.
residents, but for generations to come.
Yes,
That,
I like
that
that.
clean drinking water
You're switching
is,
the order of the sentences?
no, I'm saying, I'm getting rid of the first one, saying it is vital that the town take measures to ensure clean drinking water is available, not only for current residents, but for generations to come. So, it is vital that the town take measures to ensure clean drinking water is available.
We have no rule
Oh, you know, there's already stuff in there.
over that. That's a health department.
Okay?
Well, sort
This is
of.
just a little health section.
It's a health bit.
It's a health bit.
I mean,
So
I
that
don't
could not
have, you don't have
fit
any
in.
control over my drinking water.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a
well.
well.
The last two
So there's lots of
paragraphs
wells in
probably
Lansing.
go together.
I'm with you on that. There's,
Are really
We have
ones.
control over the contamination of them, though, by saying we don't want auto dealerships to be over areas that we know are aquifers that are being used. We have some control over that. We're not telling you where to get your water, but we do have controls how to make sure that your water stays clean.
so if I don't have clean water, shall I call you? I mean, I'm just
You
asking.
call the health
Like,
department, the town really doesn't have.
This
I
is
know.
a department issue?
But as part of our planning issues is trying to make it not be a problem for you.
I don't
And
see how you can
it
do
happens,
that.
there's more effect when you get to the zoning changes, which we're not doing,
Right.
but that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Joe. The
I
last two paragraphs
so-
really are the same issue.
Okay, so let's go back to the contamination.
Okay.
What are we doing with that one? Are we leaving it in, taking it out?
I think you were switching those two sentences, right?
That's what I thought.
Just,
Well, I was just adding one, which is, it's vital that the town take measures to ensure clean drinking water is available for their current residents
And for generations.
and for generations to come. This is why we have those water districts, but that's just
Wow.
well, lots of people are on wells.
true.
That's right.
So do we leave that in, take the whole paragraph
I
out?
think it's a health,
It's a health issue that
Just-
the town has some control over. I know we don't have
Yeah.
complete control, but we got a little bit. I think it's just worth mentioning where potential contamination sources can come from.
Well, I'd put that in
Right, that's
second,
second.
second,
switch them,
Yeah.
switch those two
Okay.
sentences.
so that it just sort of, yes.
I would say contaminated drinking water may come
Okay.
from many
Yeah.
sources.
Oh, so I thought you were taking that sentence out and I was.
Well, we just had
Just
it.
switching.
Yeah, sorry.
We're switching it.
It's gonna be the second
The
sentence.
last
in
will be
paragraph.
first, and the first will be last.
That's biblical.
Yeah, are you having to come to Jesus moment now here? We're gonna-
No, we
it's
can't
like-
do that, we can't put that in.
I still don't see how the town is gonna control that. How are you gonna control,
Well, you can't control it, but you can take into consideration.
You identify it as a potential.
I think what Joe's doing, he's
Yes, yes.
making people aware.
As an
Yeah.
example, if you have an auto dealership, zoning requires that you put curbs if you have X number of vehicles to catch runoff and any contaminants.
It's
So, I mean,
it's
it's
a
a,
health department.
It's
that's
more,
a, that's a,
yes.
Isn't it?
it's in
No,
the zoning
I mean, we-
description. It's in regulations, zoning
All right,
regulations.
next paragraph,
So
another issue.
those two paragraphs go together. They shouldn't be two different ones, first of all. They're both related
fine.
to, it is an interesting concept. I hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah, is that a comp plan?
Your last sentence, the town already has a standard house number.
Yeah, but we don't, I'm thinking that we want to talk about mandating it more, because right now, you can't go down the street and know where the house numbers are and be sure. And when you're talking about emergency vehicles driving through towns, trying to figure out where
Fire
293 is,
vehicles, yeah.
and they're in the 187s, and they aren't sure how many houses down it is, and half the houses don't have numbers on them. It's an issue for that person who has a house number, and the emergency vehicles are trying to find them.
Well, the town does assign numbers to every house.
Yes, but it doesn't make them put in a specific place so that emergency vehicles can drive down the street and know where they are
Okay.
and find that. And when 30 seconds makes a
Okay.
difference,
We can
Okay,
put that
okay.
in a newsletter.
Can we say,
Yeah.
can we say that the town should that the town should simplify a standard house number placement system?
Sure.
Ample.
We already got some.
Should,
You have a
Put
system.
numbers
The question
on
is,
it.
whether that horse house being implemented.
What's that?
I'm saying we want
Every
to
house is coded.
strengthen where we want those
Right,
numbers to
so you punch up Waze and you drive right to it.
be. Mhm.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Every house is coded that way.
Is this a comp plan issue?
maybe it's not a
No.
complaint
Yeah.
issue, maybe it's just a goal for us to put in the newsletter.
Yep.
Please
Okay.
get a, by a large number.
We
And
could
put
certainly
it-
say in the zoning law,
Out
you
on
must
the
have
large
a
numbers on your
number,
house.
you must have a house number on your house or on your mailbox.
Yeah.
Must have it.
I
That's
mean,
not
And if they choose to get rid of it, that's their problem.
we should do it. It doesn't need to be a
We
complaint.
don't need,
No.
we don't
Is
need
this
to.
coming out then?
Sure.
Yes.
Take that sentence, 2 sentences, 1 sentence.
Andrew's happy with me.
Well, pruning is good. It looks lousy at the start, but pruning looks lousy at the start, but looks great at the end.
Okay,
Especially for
so
apple trees.
are we done with health?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to, you got a sentence in here about some houses don't have house numbers
They
at
dropped,
all?
they dropped that.
We dropped,
paragraph.
so we dropped that
Paragraph?
paragraph.
Oh,
So did you drop both paragraphs?
Yep,
Yes.
the last two in that section.
This paragraph too?
You're dropping the,
After finish
Another
the
issue and one aspect.
You said you're dropping both of them.
Both of them.
So the last 2 paragraphs.
I like that too.
Okay. Then I got a new pen.
Trying to be
Okay,
petting.
okay, heavy industry.
I don't know if you want to call it the 2012 survey, I mean, it's 6
Yeah.
years old at this point.
We should do another survey.
I mean, and
A lot of people that I actually know take it.
I never got it.
Well,
I didn't get it.
what is heavy industry? I mean, is heavy industry, go ahead.
It's Cargill.
no, I was going to say the survey, you have to decide what part of the survey was professional, the analysis or the questions.
Questions were rigged.
Well, if you had,
No,
for
I mean, it
instance,
says, we don't want national chains, I'm like, oh, you want Hallmark card?
Who wouldn't want tourism?
Well, we
People
meant
come to
big
our
box.
town to spend their money.
Of course you
We do need another survey and we should have a way to.
Well, you know, as soon as this is done, we're gonna start the next comp plan, so you need to.
You actually almost need to, it's the
Yeah.
one year.
Okay, so do we need to state that at the beginning?
I think referencing the survey that's in the comp plan. not
What's on
something
it?
that-
And
So
say
that's
the
the 20
2012.
Well,
Yeah, or you can say appendix, whatever.
The problem is, that I have, is people can say they don't want industry, but the town cannot say we don't want it. You have to say that where it has to go. And you can limit the amount of spaces it can go.
And keep reading, and I talk about what we're going to talk, it's not talking about getting rid of.
let's read the whole thing and
Read the
then.
whole thing.
I like what you said at the end.
so do I. The rest of it,
Yeah.
the rest of it, but that nails it right there, Joe. The last one nails
Which
it.
one? I like that.
That the town should revise zoning code to provide a significant buffer between any industrial zones, housing, farmland, and critical environmental areas. Current codes allow for building to be as close as 50 feet from property line.
Yeah.
And leave it at that. This is not
I like
appropriate, that's like a conclusion. I would take that last part out because you say it. It says this is not appropriate for industrial operation neighborhood. Okay, that's a conclusion.
I would just
Okay.
start it from issues.
I was.
Concerning heavy industry, issues the town should consider in order to protect the residents from problems that heavy industry could bring to the town.
Just leave that,
And
that's
I
it.
like that, yeah.
Would you include the other one in front of that or not?
No, I would just.
Would you include anything else in there?
No,
Nope, I would not.
just the
You're gonna
issues.
start right with issues and then
Yeah.
a list of the
Yes.
issues?
Yeah.
Keep that part and get rid of everything.
Instead of could, should you say may?
Should consider. No,
We
should
should
consider.
No,
No,
should,
I
no,
think
right.
that should be,
No,
should.
not up and should, but under could bring to the town.
issues the town
Where are you?
should
In the
consider.
second line,
The second
issues
Okay, I'm
may
gonna
bring
bring
to the town.
that may bring to town.
Okay,
That may.
that's okay.
Okay, vanilla. Okay.
So we basically cut that down to one side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But, you know,
this.
this is,
Are you gonna keep
This
this
is
part,
good.
the township revising zoning codes provides significant buffers? I think that's a good statement.
That is a good sentence.
I actually did that in Auburn where I
Where's the
mandated
buffer word?
That's it right here.
zoning buffers.
So if you leave that sentence in there and then you fly right into those issues that the town should consider,
Okay.
So you're gonna take everything out
So you're
up to
keeping
that
this
point?
now?
we're, I guess,
Wow.
the town of Lansing should revise zoning code to provide a significant buffer. I'm gonna keep that sentence there and then move on to issues.
So you don't want to look at your noise regulations to limit resident exposure?
I think, can you,
That's
well,
a given when you do your legislation.
Add
it
down here.
you got your
Add
list
it down
going.
here.
That even goes back to the
Okay,
house
so-
level of the lot.
Yeah.
Review and revise noise
Yes,
regulations.
yes.
Yes, I think so.
Town should
I don't
develop
think we
and
have a noise
implement.
regulation,
Yes,
do we?
listen, I'm not sure we do have a noise regulation to review.
Consider.
Well, I'll
Consider.
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 It kind of lays the.
Part of site plan review, noise impacts are part of all site plan reviews, but
Yeah.
But we don't have a noise ordinance, do we? Not yet. We talked about it a couple
There
times.
wasn't there a certain,
Noise
Volume.
ordinances are difficult to write.
We came to that conclusion, that's why I think
they're more difficult to enforce than they are to write.
Well, you gotta write them so you can
But
enforce
isn't
them.
there a
when you do
sign
them.
telling the trucks they can't, they have to?
The J breaks?
Yeah, J-Max?
That state regulates that,
That
we're
state
preempted
does
from
that.
regulating that. Well, we can get the state to put their signs up in certain areas, like
Yeah.
in front of the school.
Yeah.
And they- I had
Yeah,
one,
you
I have
want
decided
the
not to
different-
have
the
schools,
different
so
hill,
basically,
especially in
roughly equivalent to a.
I don't know, I mean, once again, we're trying to generalize here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned noise, that opens up the door
So
for
I
more
put-
consideration.
I put it in there, yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
put noise and,
Would be noise pollution?
Road use regulation is very complex too, but I've written a number of those.
we should consider it, in certain
I
places,
think
because
we
we're
should
paying,
have it, not just consider it.
we're paying to fix those roads, and those trucks destroy them.
That's right.
What, so what
Let's not
kind
pick
of?
on the truckers, please.
Let's just
No, the farms, right to
let's not
forestry, a lot of them are
No, we need
exempt.
the trucks, but we also need to be cognizant of the expense they create in the town.
We can only really regulate on a project basis, because you can't really regulate commerce.
So did
lawful
we
commerce on public
agree
highways.
on the language for this, we can move on?
I'm not sure whatever the last one's, consider noise pollution, is what I wrote, is that what?
Sure.
was
Yeah,
what-
that's
that was-
Noise pollution.
Or noise
Give that
impact?
lady a raise.
I don't know if you guys know, but in
Give
New
that
York
lady a
State,
raise.
under the
What
environmental
next, Joe?
conservation laws and regulations, noise is regulated as air pollution.
Oh, that's good to know. What next, Joe?
Yeah.
We're getting warmer.
We just have, what, the 2-page thing left?
Which is what?
Replace this paragraph, page 38, is that what's left?
Okay, which, one? Help me. Help me. Page 38, that helps. Page 38, check. Okay.
Replaces, page 38 replaces paragraph with.
Starting to see double, okay, which is okay, I'll just read one to the right.
So you're saying, take this paragraph out and put this one in.
Right.
So it just expands it somewhat.
So if 95% of residents are satisfied living in Lansing, how come they're all moving out?
They lose their jobs,
Yeah.
and the
Taxes are
taxes.
too
Taxes are high.
Taxes went up.
This is
Cornell
what,
doesn't
They
get
are
a
moving to
10-year.
Ithaca.
yeah,
I said they're not moving to Ithaca because
No.
their taxes are too high.
Caroline, not Caroline, probably going to Curie County. So,
Yeah, Caroline, the school taxes are higher in Caroline than they are in Ithaca.
I mean, do you want to lean on, do you want to lean,
Look at Trumansburg.
do you want to lean on this survey?
All the
I mean, do you want to really lean on it, or is it something that we can say stuff without? I don't really care. I mean,
It's not bad, those two paragraphs are okay.
I can live with that too. I mean, I understand what you're trying to say. You're
I
trying to
understand
balance
what you're
between
saying, Ed.
expanding residential and commercial development.
You're not
Can we do?
the survey.
No,
Get that.
well,
But
can we do a whole chapter on NIMBYism? Is there,
Not without addressing the
not my
rules and
backyardism?
as
Is there a vaccine for
Right.
that? Because I sure like to come up with one.
Yep.
All right, it's in.
Against
I like
virtually
this.
everything fled though.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So I replace this one with,
And you're keeping what you wrote, the width, you're keeping it, you're not making any changes to that?
no, that one's fine.
Yeah. Okay, the next one, page
You're
40.
taking out
Then I
page
have
40,
to-
put in.
Got page 40 again, coming up, fighting this.
I like, yes, I think the Summit Creek Valley is super, super important.
Right.
So it just expands upon that.
We own part of it.
I know that.
Well, weigh in, are you okay with that?
And I'm
Yeah.
still,
This
I'm
isn't-
okay.
This is in your backyard,
It
Oh,
is.
It's my front yard too.
and your front yard.
NIMBYism. Well, it's front yard.
It's cured, yes, frontism.
NIMBYism.
Well, it's my backyard too, I mean,
All right, let's move on to the next one then.
So you're good with Salmon Creek?
Yep.
Yes, yeah.
Natural resources?
I did.
I wrote it,
I
so I
did.
just give it.
Isn't this kind of like what we're doing if we have a
Yes,
conservation committee?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Is this redundant again, or, I mean, it doesn't matter, we already want the we already want this committee, so.
What this talks about is the fragmentation of wildlife, and this was one of the points that the county, when they commented on the plan, thought was really important, and then it got excised, and so I think we ought to put it back in.
Yes?
Yeah, that's okay.
You okay with that? All right,
Hugo Lake.
where are we now?
We're at the
Page
Hugo Lake,
42.
page 42. Hugo Lake.
Middle of the page.
Oh, okay, page 42. Okay, I'll
There's
put
two,
you
there's two.
down there.
Yeah.
Oy, okay, well, we expanded this one, didn't we?
has your favorite survey in again?
It's 2012 or 2013?
I think it's called.
I guess since I think water is like super, super important, I would expand it from a tiny paragraph.
Okay,
Because we
Let's
can't
not worry
exist
about it.
without
You'll
it.
correct me if it's 12.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm good with it if you're,
I don't want, yes.
Mike's gonna double check the date on it and put the correct date, whatever.
But
it
as
is.
far as expanding, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next one, continuing with,
So all of that,
yep,
those both paragraphs.
sediment from stream and road bank erosion, yep, absolutely.
Basically,
Right.
that's,
He added some stuff.
Also farmland erosion too.
Yeah.
Might want to put that in there also, sediment from farmland.
agricultural chemicals for.
Well, if everybody pastured their cows like we do,
Yeah, wouldn't that be wild?
along, Salmon Creek, yes.
All right, so you want to add something?
So,
with-
Add some-
Joe added some stuff, yes.
I added,
Yeah,
the last two plus a bunch of.
the algae.
Algal
blooms, Yeah,
Well, I mean, we all realize that Salmon Creek isn't exclusively in Lansing, right?
right,
Right.
right.
The watershed goes up.
Yeah.
You know, there's
Watershed
another
goes way
gun
up.
club at
Yeah.
Salmon Creek Gun Club.
But we want to
I
make
didn't realize it
sure,
was on Salmon Creek, I
Like
know.
it
that.
is.
Oh, yeah.
Up north.
Yeah, so I mean,
That's
you know,
great.
but our section of it,
We
we should
can't
take
control
care of
that.
Well, we do what we can.
Yes.
We can talk with them now,
Yes.
and we can leave.
I would think that would be fine, I'm just saying. Water in Salmon Creek is not exclusively in
Ours.
Tompkins County.
Of course
Right,
not,
of course
no,
not, but
Okay.
but it goes
Well,
into
we're
We're
Hugo
not having
Lake.
people drinking from that water.
I
It goes in the lake and
understand.
everybody's drinking from it.
I understand, but so.
but I think we're moving on to Cuba Lake, aren't we?
Yep,
Town should always be on high alert with regard to threats. I mean, this is kind of stating the obvious, isn't it? Physical integrity of cargo salt mine and potential impact on lake. Okay. Well, at least you mentioned the DC revenue monitors, if that's good. You know, balance.
I mean, I think
They
it's important
monitor the
to
salt
mention industry, we're not saying you suck, we're just saying with
Well-
big industry, there's
So-
things that need to be paid attention to.
This is what I have a concern about this, is that these industries are regulated already. by governing body to decide with the DEC, right?
They're above and beyond what.
Above and beyond. And we can recognize that we're concerned about that, which you addressed very nicely in that first section, so we're aware of it. I don't know how we can do something that larger governing bodies are already doing.
We're not regulating it. We're just
eyes on
acknowledging
the
their
ground.
existence in our
Listen.
town.
This is important to us and we're paying attention. And
Well, you mentioned that in the first group, which is fine, when it says the town needs to be cognizant of the manner in which industrial operations can be negatively affect the lake. Okay.
then we give some examples.
Do you really want to say high alert? Do you want to just say become aware, or?
Show me where you're.
Yeah, I would, you don't need
High
that.
alert sounds like you got the
Tell me where
second
you're.
line in that
Sure.
paragraph. I mean,
Sure.
should be aware,
Thank you, Michael.
Or should continue to be aware.
right?
Should maintain awareness.
I like that better.
Maintain, promote, foster.
Maintain awareness, okay? Maintain awareness of the manner in which, okay, I agree. All right.
And then you got a line in the next paragraph down under says, all such operations have the potential to open up a path between the salt mines and the lake. And I don't know if that's too big of a jump. You're talking inter-county?
Well,
potential.
Well, Redsdorf was an aquifer, so it had nothing to do with the lake, so,
That was actually, yeah. It's not even,
you know,
not even compared.
okay, kind of, okay, good.
I guess I don't mind the one about the ash pile because you just say it's necessary for the town to be vigilant in alerting the state to potential problems. But we don't.
State
The state regulates it,
They
but
have
they're
a
not
line
there.
permit for it. They have a
You know,
landfill permit for it.
If a neighbor all of a sudden looks and says, oh my goodness, they'll call the town first.
True.
I just don't know why this
Do you want to take out
second to last
the
paragraph is
last-
necessary.
You want to take out the Cargill paragraph?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
take that one out.
Thank you. That's good. Okay, the one below that,
I'm fine with that one. It's
You can take out
just
some of it.
acknowledging that it's there on our property.
okay.
I think it's bad that we're, you know, we're watching,
either.
even though all we
Is
can
that
do
the
is
current
tell.
name, is future operating company power plant?
Well, it depends who you talk to. That COC, yes.
Get that right.
Yeah, I mean, they're like
Herrick.
they're like the
Yeah.
granddaughter of,
You know where that name comes from? I know, you'll tell us. Beowulf. Beowulf.
you know,
Does it
Beowulf,
really?
and then there's Riesling on top of that actually owns Beowulf. There, back to you, buddy.
Advance nicely.
Different types of Rieslings.
I'm sure, I was waiting.
Next paragraph is
Next
quite,
paragraph.
depressing if you think that in the future there's going to be all this pressure to export our water or sell the water. I don't know.
We're seeing that around now.
Go ahead, Michael.
I'm just saying it's depressing. I didn't say it wasn't true. I said that's terribly depressing.
Mike's back on the.
I was going to say, under the second last, you say industries are largely state regulated. Why don't you say regulated by the state of New York DEC?
Let's be specific.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I think when you're talking about the power plant, they aren't just regulated by DEC, they're regulated by the Public Service Commission and some other places too, depending on which activity you're talking about.
Well, we'll put Public Service Commission down too.
I just leave it general so that we don't have to figure out which,
All right, no,
yeah,
FERC has regulatory control too. That's
yeah.
true.
So it's,
State
Emissions,
regulatory
yeah.
agencies.
yeah, that's why I'm leaving it vague. because
Well,
it's-
say state and federal, because you've
And
got.
federal.
Okay, I'll take
emissions.
that,
Okay.
sure.
Well, what about international treaties? Sorry. I'm just
Where is
kidding.
this going?
So here it says largely, I would say state and federally regulated.
The next one,
Well, when we're in the state, then you have to do more than just to live in the state then also. In the next sentence, or the rest of that sentence. If it's a federal problem, you're not gonna live the state.
Appropriate.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
It could be a county issue, it could be,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The appropriate regulatory body.
Yeah.
James. Coinciding jurisdiction.
We got a natural gas industry paragraph. That's the one we're looking at now.
Yeah.
This is, it's making a lot of specific conclusions. Any way we can do a broad stroke on this?
Like just a general half that size paragraph statement?
Yes, to be good stewards of Cuba Lake.
Yeah, that would protect this gift of clean water, and we don't allow, different
Just
industries.
start on the census starts Cuba Lake.
Well, I mean, even that's a general, we understand if you want to use it as your introduction, but then it's a prime target for large water users such as volume plants.
Is it?
Is it? I mean, to me, if you want to say a general statement that this region is.
It's not.
No.
I mean, once again,
I just think we should protect this.
so do I, and I'm totally in agreement with you as far as the exportation.
General.
Oh, yeah.
Exportation, we should guard against the general exportation, if that's the right, I'm mispronouncing, I mean tired, of Cuba Lake and the surrounding Finger Lakes.
I agree.
Is that what you wanted to say, whatever you just said?
I'm just to recommend that you don't, exploitation, excuse me.
Yeah, I got that.
I listened, where's Vanna? I need to put a letter there.
Instead of being this specific about
The whole paragraph.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and you're
it's
absolutely
just-
right, that watering bottling is just, those are
We've done
nightmarish.
feasibility studies, it doesn't pay, it's.
I would
Now.
fight,
Yeah.
I would fight that one right to the end.
Right, but we need to have stuff, we need to start talking about before someone.
I understand, so if you
The
put the
word
terms of exploitation
Yeah, that-
in there, you broaden where you want to,
Let's just say our water
Make
resources.
people aware
for
and
the exploitation of our water resources.
Yeah.
potential.
Okay. Because that also is well water.
Potential
Yeah,
exploitation.
potential exploitation.
All right.
We should guard against the potential.
Somebody wants to tie
exploitation of
iron
our
and
water
also my
resources.
water.
But how many times has a well been dug and this person's neighbor now has no water? Right?
Okay, and then just start as drought conditions worsen.
And you can't
Well,
regulate water coming out.
I don't think it-
Once again, I think if you put that sentence in there, you cover everything.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
say take the whole thing out.
And
Yeah,
drought
you probably
conditions
don't-
are not
That we want to
located
protect the
country.
water.
In fact,
Yes.
Yes.
We don't want any of it
past
to
2
be.
years, there is-
How about that last sentence that just said we should be enacting laws before groundwater pressure hit us?
Before what? Say it again?
Last sentence.
Jet stream should be
Um,
a year after an El Nino event.
No.
Of course.
Before.
It is advised, I like this, well, not so much the enactment laws, but that we adopt a proactive approach
Okay.
to protecting our natural resources, including Cuba Lake.
Especially.
Especially Cuba Lake.
Especially Cuba.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, you want that. We want to highlight that.
Yeah, because this is the lake section.
Yep.
Okay, did you get that?
No.
There's only so much genius in me, buddy, okay? And we're running on fumes right now.
Exploitation of water.
That we should take a proactive approach to prevent the exploitation of our natural resources, especially Cuba Lake.
Sure.
Take.
See, lightning does strike twice, but not 3 times.
He's writing quickly.
Thank God.
He'll learn short.
Thank God we're at, yeah,
Just
well,
so everyone know, in the water industry, it's called sequestration and removal.
okay.
And the town is preempted from regulating water withdrawal, especially from the ground. The state has exclusive
Oh, I knew
jurisdiction.
you were gonna say that.
It's true.
Yeah.
So what we have in control is we can prohibit water processing plants. We can prohibit certain land uses that remove the water. But if somebody owns the land and we try to tell them, you're not allowed to take water out of the ground, well,
Oh, you're not allowed to have water.
besides that being a taking, you're also preempted. The state regulates that.
Okay.
There's actual case law on that.
Yeah,
All right, so
So,
this is just
you
one
want-
I was
sentence.
feeling so good.
Yes.
No, I'm just saying, you
Instead
have
of
to
this
protect,
paragraph.
Yes.
protecting the water resources and avoiding sequestration and removal
You
of
got
those
the word.
resources.
I didn't get them all, no. I've got
So
adopt a
there's only-
proactive approach to prevent the
The
potential
exploitation.
exploitation of our water resources.
our natural resources, and especially Cuba Lake or something like that.
Of our natural
resources.
aquatic,
So you don't
Of our
want to say
natural
water
aquatic
resources?
resources?
You want to say natural resources instead of water?
Water
Water.
aquifer
yeah, of
too,
our water
so water
resources.
resources.
Especially
Of
Cuba.
our natural water resources.
Water is natural.
It is. Why am I redone it again?
I thought this was already in there somewhere.
So was what?
Sorry, people, isn't really up to date.
See the
Okay.
trees planted.
We got what? We're just about there, right?
We're very close.
You're very close.
Page number.
And just so you know,
I have that one.
somebody's put in a sentence that says, as drought conditions worsen throughout the country, I'm not sure they've seen the recent worldwide data on rainfall.
Well, we're gonna take that out.
US data and rainfall.
We're gonna
And
take
you're
Now
also
we're
gonna
gonna
have
take that
more.
Okay. What do we have left, Joe? Sustainability?
Yeah, and then the final one, which I'm not sure if that's been modified already or not. Sustain, replace, housing climate change.
Okay.
I know guys feeling about
Well, the effects of global warming are known, the causes of it isn't known.
Is there a reason why you got the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change mentioned by title?
Do you want to give credibility to your statement?
I'm working on
So I'll show you done too.
Viagra.
Which panel, there have been 5 of them so far, plus 2 other agencies that tried to supplant them, but lost the political war inside.
We could just say pressing issues to face all of humanity and can we shorten that paragraph?
Yep.
Just take the first sentence and the last sentence.
There you go.
There's actually more scientists. in the
And then
agencies
combine it
than
with the next
agencies.
short little paragraph because it's
Yep.
part of that.
So you're taking the first sentence, the last sentence, and the last paragraph, what you're saying?
Well, the first sentence and last sentence is out or in?
Then we're using the first sentence, last sentence, and the
Right.
last paragraph.
Okay.
Or you can even take out the very last sentence,
Yep.
which,
Yep, because we already started.
just keep that first sentence in the second paragraph.
Yep.
Blend it.
First,
Do you know what?
last,
So keep the
and
town of
one
Lansing
paragraph.
can continue and get rid of the very last sentence.
Okay.
So what's the difference with your page 63 replace?
It's the difference between expanding and not necessarily expanding.
I think that was part of the review.
Okay, no, I wasn't sure if that was.
Yeah.
That was in the.
Well, we already addressed that last
I
one,
already
right?
did that.
I wasn't sure, because I keep getting all these different
Okay.
copies, and I'm not sure what the current one is.
63 is what,
so-
complete X?
That's been
Yes.
done already.
That's the
Did-
conclusion.
I just want to make sure that this is, what I did was, in the 2006 comp plan, we had the planning, or the comp plan committee's goals and recommendations when Joe, my Joe, put it together.
Okay,
So this was one of the appendixes.
okay,
So what
great.
I did was I updated it with all of the planning board recommendations in it.
Okay,
So it's all pretty much accurate now, and, you know, Joe was saying we don't have a implementation plan. That's really what this is the implementation
Okay.
plan.
All right, so,
write the recommendations and the
Yeah.
timelines.
I would like people to read these definitions, and let's talk about them next Wednesday during the working session.
We don't have a working session next
where's our other meeting?
We
Okay.
can.
We can do we can do a working session then.
There's a lot, I'm just telling you, there's
There
a
is.
lot.
I'm not going to be next week.
Why don't we
Okay.
see how it goes?
Yeah, we
Look,
are.
read it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Read it, so people,
Yeah.
Dynamite
you have
kid?
time to read it.
Tuesday.
Can I interrupt for 2
Yes.
seconds? Joe asked me for some information
Oh,
on
yeah.
census. Now, I took the stuff that was in the 2006 plans and I just updated it with new numbers, expanded it out. Do you want to use that? Or do you want to use that? And I also found this other chart that had Tompkins County
I use them both.
that has the population and housing changes. So what I would suggest is to basically add this as another chart. So I can put this in place of the one that's in the comp plan, and then add this too.
Okay.
So what's the action plan for next week then, besides our usual long list of stuff we have to do, as far as the comp plan goes?
What's that?
What's our action plan for next week as we continue to move this thing? First of all, I thought we did great tonight. But as we move this thing forward, what's our action plan for next Wednesday?
So, well, getting back to what
But did
he
you
originally
seeker
brought up,
make the
is
changes?
this gonna come to Is this getting 99 or 98% done?
I would like to discuss the changes to some of these descriptions and incorporate some of them. And I know you need time to read them, so I'm saying let's discuss them at the next working session at the end of the meeting. Give it a chance.
As of right now, you haven't made any changes that would trigger any major changes in seeker. You have
That's
some
what we need to
statements
know.
that, you know.
And I'm not disagreeing with what you have
are
here.
subjective, but that's what I.
Okay, I'm not disagreeing with what you have here. I'm simply saying that these changes in definitions, in all fairness, personally, I'd rather move this thing forward with our adjustments tonight, and then we start the next process of defining those definitions at the next phase.
Discuss the map.
So the definitions you came up with, or that you have, Joe, are ones that define the wish list map?
They can be incorporated into the other map too. Or they're talking about what we want to have happen, which is lacking in the definitions now. The definitions are very strict at what's going on now as opposed to what we want to do with these things. So when the planning board would talk about how they want to have the commercial districts have side roads that bring people in as opposed to everything coming off the street, it's not there. They keep saying that's what they want.
So
but
it
they don't.
should be in the comp plan.
And so I'm taking some of that language and putting it in here so it says what we keep saying we want to have happen, but haven't actually put in the plan.
And he's not using the royal we.
No.
It's from actually listening to.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I mean, once again, my only concern is we're trying to do that much. Can we make once again, conceptually, can we make a paragraph, 2 paragraphs that there are proposed changes going on, and one of the things we will charge the new committee with is to address these issues, and those issues that you're talking about, those definitions. I want to move this thing along and give it enough time for the next group to do that. I'm just concerned that we're going through all this stuff right now, and just to push it forward when that, in my opinion, can wait till the next phase.
I'm saying let's take time, read this stuff.
I don't have enough, 1 week's not going to do it for me. When you're having 9 months of this stuff and you don't have the planning board's input, I'd rather move it on to the next group and have them
It
discuss
is
it.
a concept that would be good to discuss at the planning board level, and we can change the map within 6 months if we want.
And put it in writing
Let me
that,
just add a little bit more thing too, and I think when the planning board did their definitions, and some of it was trying to be specific to create new zones, like the low impact of Lake Shore and and so when you generalize it, so it doesn't give you the ammunition you need to come back with the zoning ordinance and say how you need to separate them out. You're making them too generic. So I think the idea is to have a rational decision so that you can say this is high density residential, this is low residential density, so that you have a rational basis for saying why you need 2 different zones or 3 different zones or 1.
I'm just asking everyone to spend a week, read them, and let's discuss them at that point, because I hear you didn't have time to really read and think about it at all.
We have a working meeting in May, and we're planning on passing.
We want to move this forward.
Yeah.
I just want,
Our goal is to still pass it in May.
Guy, do we
Regular
have
meeting.
enough time to do all this, in your opinion? If we change some of the language in those definitions, will that trigger 239?
If you're going to change the land use map and alter by definition, title, and form, 70% of your districts, then yes, it's going to need a 239, and yes, you will have a substantial seeker overall to look at. Whether or not you're actually creating a substantial reordering of existing priorities is a whole different level of seeker that would have to be looked at that point. You may not be, I don't know. But you're on the potential future land use map, you're eliminating R1 and R2. I'm sure that's going to generate comments.
Yep.
You're altering the map, you're adding zones, you're changing the definition of zones. B1 and B2, I'm not sure what the difference has ever been other than gas pumps.
Cell towers.
So it is a
Cell towers,
larger
okay.
conversation. That
That's a pretty substantial batch of changes. Could you get it done? Sure.
Without risking what we're trying to accomplish?
I'd like to try to just
I don't know. I mean,
this a
yeah,
little
you
bit.
get it
No, I'm
done.
saying let's read it, let's figure out this language that we can use and
But-
work with. Let's spend a week and read it. That's okay.
The consequence of getting it done is what you can't get measured because you don't know what it's going to look like.
Well, my whole thing is that we can put enough firm language in there to charge the next body that reviews these things. You can put enough teeth into that part of the comp plan that people can say, see, the comp plan says we have to look at these things. It's in here. We have to do this. And maybe the concern is that this won't be addressed. But I think there's ways we can put language in there to charge the next group to look at them thoroughly before we move forward. And I think that would, I'm trying to find that compromise here, so that would help going forward with your concerns, but also at the same time, put it on schedule so Michael can still apply for the grant.
We're dedicated to having this done by the first May.
He just wants you to read the description.
I will read them. I promise I'll read them.
It's late in the
No.
evening. Let's read it. And
I don't go to
discuss
bed
it.
till midnight, so
And
I
then
promise
we-
I'll read them and I'll have black markers on them and everything else, but I
We'll
will read
finish
it.
We'll discuss it at our next meeting, and hopefully we will have the 90% draft at our next meeting.
98.
98.
We're close.
Whatever.
Not if you're changing the land use maps.
No.
That substantially, you won't even be at 70%.
Okay. Well, that's.
And you might
that's
be reordering substantial priorities, which means you're heading right for a pos deck.
I mean, I'm okay
Which
with
will not be
reading.
done within a year.
So it sounds
I'm
like,
just telling you the truth. I mean, if you substantially
I just
reorder a
leave it the way
major
it is.
priority,
Let it roll.
you could easily trigger a pos deck.
Let's read it and talk about it next week.
Okay, we'll do that.
I was gonna ask you, do I make these
Yeah,
other
all the
yellow
other-
changes?
yeah, all the
No,
other
but these
changes.
changes, that when I meant to comply with the 239, I
Yeah.
had them re-reviewed. But you see, that's all gonna change if you change all the definitions.
Okay. And if you change the definitions, you're gonna have to be changing the references to all those zones and all the other descriptors throughout the plan.
so it sounds like to meet our goal, we probably should adopt the plan with the goal of redoing the map.
And I'm saying we
within a
may
year.
take some of this language and stick it in the existing verbiage. And so let's read it, because I think one of the issues is that this doesn't talk about what we want to do. And
So you could
I've got
adjust the
language.
verbiage that would make it more precise and still adopt the proposed
right,
existing map.
let's read it and talk about how we can adopt some of this stuff.
We'll give it a try.
We're gonna try that.
So you're gonna discuss it at next week's meeting?
Yes.
When?
When? Have you seen the
We got
agenda?
18 agenda items.
No,
18, we're
33.
on 35, I think.
35 now?
Yeah.
Well, there's a fourth Wednesday in the month.
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Window's getting smaller, isn't it?
I think we adopt.
I mean, if you're gonna talk about it at the next meeting, then you're not gonna have any resolution to adopt it at the next meeting.
No. No, we couldn't. You'd still have to, you
Well,
still have to do the
yeah,
secret.
we got
until you
more
know
to
what
go
the
through
final
for that,
version,
Right.
or 98% final version is.
So if we get to that point where you're comfortable with it, 98%, we can do the seeker in the first meeting in May? And then approve it the second one, or do it that same
Well,
meeting, or what?
You can do them the same night.
Yeah, you can do them the same night. You're talking about doing the seeker review. And the results of that review, the conclusions, and where it goes from there is the issue. So you can do the seeker review at any time. You could have done it tonight if you wanted, but with changes coming, you definitely would have to do it again. So what was the point?
Let me make, oh, you're not finished.
No, I'm pretty much finished.
Okay. I think that discussion should include Tom Ellis, maybe that discussion of those specific changes that might improve the descriptors we have to be more accurate for planning board use, which is what you're saying.
I'd rather see you take the existing ones in here and tweak them rather than trying to wholesale change them with new titles and definitions, because, you know,
Yeah, the
planning
new
board
titles
spent
and
a
definitions
long
relate
time
to the map.
Yeah,
because it
okay.
changes the maps.
How about if we have a committee with me, Tom Ellis, a couple of you, a couple other people, and just sit down and talk through this stuff and come back?
A separate conversation, get back.
You want to do that by what time? Is that before we approve it, after we approve it?
Before we approve, I want to do it the next week or so.
I'm gonna be gone all next week, so I want to
The
be.
window's getting closer.
Everybody's gets pretty hard
Well,
right now.
You got noble causes, but once again, it's the implementation that concerns me.
I understand, that's why cleared a lot of my calendar to be here tonight.
Yeah,
Why
I would
don't
just,
you-
I would just try to keep the existing stuff and just tweak those rather than changing them, because that's
Would you
gonna
at
change.
least meet, you and Tom Ellis, read those and just talk about the merit of making them more precise for the planning board use?
Could you also just add something like that map as just a supplemental map? Here's the
further
proposed
discussion?
future land
Yeah.
use, and here's a broader, here's a broader base map that helps inform and
General
describe that.
discussion?
I don't know.
That's not,
Say it's a wish list.
Yeah? Are you
I'm
open to
not
doing
just saying that.
Well, you can call it a conceptual
A
plan.
conceptual-
Or conceptual,
Okay, let's,
and then have this is the more detailed.
I don't know what Tom's schedule's like. Let's see if we can get together and sit down and talk.
Okay.
I can generally get away during the day so that, but I don't know what Tom's schedule's like. He got away to meet with me during the day, so I think that's,
Depends on where he's working.
yeah, I know. Let's try to get that together as quickly as we can.
Shall we move to close the meeting?
I move to Or you just call it.
Yeah, add in column.
Have a good night.
You want to reach out
Thank
to
you.
Tom and see what he's free?